Hannah Chan was practically vibrating with rage. Brooklyn was just as furious, her breath coming in ragged bursts, the first warning sign of an impending panic attack. A suffocating pressure was building in her chest, a feeling of absolute betrayal. Jason. He would rather tell this old fossil where he was than tell her. Why? On what grounds? When he was chasing after her, hadn't he sworn he only had eyes for her? Brooke's eyes were bloodshot as she glared at Hannah, a look so feral it made her own bodyguards hesitate to approach. Just then, Mr. Lee hurried over. Miss Lynn, you've caused enough of a scene for one day. The family expects you to be preparing for the auction. After it's over, you can look for Jason Miller all you want. His tone was serious, leaving no room for argument. Brooke's chest heaved. Finally, she spat out her parting words. Fine, we're leaving. Hannah-chun, I'll see you at the auction. A bitter resentment coiled in her gut. The family. It was always the damned family, controlling her every move. She was so sick of it. Hannah watched her leave, her expression as placid as ever. But as she glanced in the direction Jason had gone, a flicker of dissatisfaction crossed her face. Over before it even began. The thought left a sour taste in her mouth. She crossed her arms and returned to her room, only to find that the pink envelope, the love letter, was gone. Sprite, pick out an outfit for me and send it over. Damn, that was a close call. Jason was already in his car, well outside of Brooke's search radius. If he hadn't been quick on his feet, she would have found him. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about Hannah Chun. He decided then and there he couldn't stay at her place anymore. Professor Chun was a married woman, after all. If he kept showing up, people would start to talk. He buckled his seatbelt and drove to a secluded stretch of asphalt in the suburbs. He pulled over, and a few moments later, another car slid up beside his. The windows rolled down, and a silver briefcase was tossed into his passenger seat. Jason glanced at it, frowning. A briefcase for a suit? Sprite, you didn't buy anything too expensive, did you? A $200 suit would have been fine. Making money wasn't easy, and he still needed to find a time to sell that sapphire bracelet. Don't be so cheap. Sprite's voice crackled through his earpiece. You're the head of a major corporation now. Can you please not act like you're on a budget? How are you supposed to put on a show in a $200 suit? Besides, she added, it was a friend's senior design project. It's free. As for the briefcase, just open it. Hearing the word free, Jason's face lit up. Now, that was what he was talking about. He could use more friends like that. He popped the latches on the briefcase and froze. Sprite, are you sure I can bring this thing inside? Tucked neatly into the foam interior was a compact handgun. Sprite's voice was nonchalant. Isn't she a beauty? High-end piece from the black market. I'm just lending it to you. You can't take it into the venue, obviously, but it's good for protection outside. The last time Jason had been at the Sterling estate, he'd been trapped because he was unarmed. This time, he was holding the great equalizer. Very thorough, Jason said, thoroughly impressed. He began changing into the suit right there in the car. Just as he finished buttoning the jacket, a pink envelope fluttered out from his old clothes and landed on the floor mat. What's this? Jason frowned, then raised an eyebrow. Was this another love letter from some freshman? Had his charm really reached such legendary levels? He couldn't help but puff out his chest a little. But when he picked up the envelope and read the contents, he froze solid. Recipient, Jason Miller. Message, Professor Chun. Will you be my girlfriend? His lips went numb as he read the words aloud, the world crashing down around him. Holy hell. This was the letter he'd written 2 years ago. He thought he'd lost it. How did it end up here? It looked like it had gone a little wet and stuck to his clothes. That could have only happened at one place. Hannah Chen's house. Son of a... Jason was seeing red. He thought he'd lost it. Who the hell gave it to Hannah? He certainly hadn't. And if it was in her house, did that mean she'd already read it? No wonder she had been acting so strangely this morning. A hot flush crept up his neck. He couldn't bear to look at it for another second. He crumpled the letter into a ball and shoved it deep into his pocket. Nothing happened, right? Just pretend nothing ever happened. He definitely couldn't go back to Professor Chen's house again. If she asked him about it, he was completely screwed. Midtown General Hospital. Ma'am, the clothes you requested have arrived. Ava directed a team of more than a dozen guards as they carried in case after case, filling the private suite. Inside each one was a different, exquisite gown. Clara was standing before a mirror, applying her lipstick. She gave the cases a cursory glance. Just put them down. She finished her makeup, the picture of calm. Ava stood behind her, biting her tongue. Hadn't her boss been sitting there doing her makeup all morning? Wasn't her, but sore? Soon enough, Clara stood and began browsing the gowns. She selected a black dress covered in crushed diamonds, specifically designed to accentuate the curve of her back. Ava couldn't hold back any longer. Ma'am, I know you weren't seriously injured, but you fell into a lake and caught a chill. You really don't have to go today. A man like Victor Sterling was hardly a threat they couldn't handle on their own. What do you know? Clara's expression was unshakable. Jason will be there today. Why? Ava was confused. Mr. Sterling doesn't even have the credentials to get into an event like this. Ma'am, I think you might be overthinking things. It was a blunt thing to say, but it was the truth. Clara's lips curved into a thin, knowing smile. A flicker of amusement crossed her regal, icy features. Oh, she purred. Then you are severely underestimating him. The connection between Jason and Lucy Miller was a tiny clue, but it was enough. Jason had to be connected to G Corp. He might even be a high-level executive. She had seen the ambition in his eyes. He was no simple, disinherited waste of a man. And so, of course, she had to go. She was going to catch her little prey. Keep a close eye on Victor Sterling, Clara commanded. I want to know exactly what he's doing with G Corp. If there's nothing else, you can wait for me by the door. Though reluctant, Ava had no choice but to nod and leave. As evening fell, the city lights glittered. Inside a towering commercial skyscraper in the heart of Midtown, the auction was officially underway. Guests began to arrive in a steady stream. Mr. Zhang, Mr. Li, Mr. Wang, long time no see. After sealing his deal with G Corp yesterday, Victor Sterling had been too excited to sleep. He'd arrived at the venue first thing in the morning, partly to network with the other businessmen and partly to preen. He was about to inherit the Sterling fortune. He was about to become one of the most powerful men in New York City. Once that happened, he could have as many mistresses as he wanted. Victor was lost in his daydreams, oblivious to the looks of contempt many of the guests were giving him. His intentions were so transparent that everyone could see them, but they held their tongues, wary of his power. A short while later, Brooke Lynn and Hannah Chen arrived, one after the other. Hannah's attire was understated, a simple black suit and black frame glasses that gave her a composed, professional air. It was her usual style, which she only ever changed when Jason was around. The only deviation tonight was a conservative pencil skirt that did nothing to highlight her figure. She found a seat off to the side and sat in silence, the glasses obscuring her stunning features and allowing her to fade into the background. Brooke, in contrast, was dressed to command attention. A pale gold fishtail gown clung to her curves. Her skin looked as white as snow, and her long, wavy hair framed a small, exquisite face. But a deep frown was etched between her brows, and her eyes burned with a fire that could kill. The men who might have harbored illicit thoughts quickly backed away, not daring to meet her gaze. Damn it, the Lynn girl looks like she's about to have another breakdown. I hope she doesn't go crazy in here. It was something Brooke was fully capable of. Once, after being taunted by someone at a party, she had smashed a champagne bottle over their head. Remembering this, the crowd gave her a wide berth. With a 10-foot radius cleared around her, Brooke's expression remained thunderous. Mr. Li, she said, her voice low and laced with venom. After this auction is over, you tell those vultures in the family to stay out of my business with Jason. If they don't, I swear I'll drive this car straight into the family mausoleum and burn it to the ground. Mr. Li, standing behind her, could only sigh. Miss Lynn, now is not the time to be willful. The family has already agreed to call off your engagement to the head of G Corp. He paused, then added, however, for this auction, you are required to establish a good relationship with him. At his words, Brooke's eyes lit up. Really? The storm clouds in her mind parted instantly. The family's previous insistence that she marry into G Corp had disgusted her. The man who had built that empire in such a short time had to be some 50-year-old fossil or at least a 40-year-old predator. The family had never once considered her happiness. As long as they weren't forcing her to marry that Mr. G, she could find Jason eventually. And with Clara on death's door, there would be no one left to compete with her. Brooke's eyes sparkled. She didn't even register Hannah-chan as a threat. That old fossil was a decade older than Jason. It would never work between them. Besides, Jason had liked her first. Really, Mr. Lee confirmed, nodding as he watched her mood improve. But a strange look passed through his eyes. The family had indeed canceled the G Corp engagement because they had found a much better option. Miss Lynn, you will understand one day, he thought with a weary sigh. The late Mr. Lynn had saved his life, and after his and his wife's passing, Mr. Lee had dutifully raised Brooke. He'd watched her grow up and had come to feel a fatherly affection for her. He had shielded her from the family's politics as much as he could. But this time, on the matter of her marriage, the family's chosen candidate truly was the best. Brooke didn't notice his expression. She found a seat and sat down. From the back of the room, A woman wearing an iris-patterned masquerade mask watched her, a slight arch to her brow. Well, well, I didn't expect her to be here, Clara murmured, a smirk playing on her red lips. Interesting. The pieces were falling into place. It seemed the Lin family was now targeting the famously elegant heir of the Sue family. Brooke was even wearing a gown in his favorite color. Perfect. She wouldn't have to lift a finger to help Jason sever that tie himself. Outside the venue, a black Aston Martin glided to a stop at the curb, instantly drawing a crowd. That car, that's not from the Sterling family. Whoa. Besides the Sterlings and the Lins, who else in New York has that kind of money? You can count on one hand the number of people in this city who can afford a car like that. I wonder which family's heir it is. Hey, I heard Julian Sue is coming tonight. Maybe it's him. As the crowd whispered, the matte black door of the Aston Martin swung open. A single black leather shoe appeared, followed by a man in a perfectly tailored black suit that accentuated his tall, athletic frame. The fabric stretched taut over the subtle lines of muscle beneath. His dark hair was styled impeccably, radiating testosterone. A simple black mask covered his entire face. Though his features were hidden, his physique, his bearing, the shape of his jaw, it was enough to be devastatingly handsome. There was a saying, handsomeness is a feeling. Oh, my God. A few of the socialites in the crowd gasped, their faces flushing. I thought Julian Sue was the gentle, intellectual type. This guy's way too hot. No way. That can't be Mr. Sue, can it? Several young women couldn't tear their eyes away. Jason, adjusting his mask, stepped out of the car, oblivious to the commotion. He was, however, extremely pleased with his look. Sprite, he said into his comms, not bad. This senior project of your friend's is pretty good. How much would a suit like this cost if I wanted to buy it? He had to admit, the clothes really did make the man. Sprite was quick to bring him back to reality. Of course it is. My friend is one of the top designers in the world. For you, friendship price, maybe $66,000. Jason nearly choked. $66,000? For a suit? What kind of fabric was worth that much? Suddenly, he didn't like it so much anymore. He decided his 5-year-old high school sweatshirt was just fine, reliable, comfortable, and cheap. Ahem, in the car, he cleared his throat, gently closing the door. Don't forget to return on time. We don't want to pay any late fees. With that, he walked toward the entrance and presented his credentials to security. Mr. G, right this way, sir. After confirming his identity, the security guard's demeanor became instantly deferential. He summoned several ushers to escort Jason inside. The crowd by the entrance froze, hearing the name. G Corp. Mr. G. For a moment, they thought they'd misheard. The mysterious head of G Corp was a young man who looked to be barely out of his 20s. And he was that ridiculously good-looking, with no family backing and no known background. What kind of genius monster was he? They had all assumed the enigmatic Mr. G was either the scion of some great family or a seasoned shark who'd been navigating the corporate world for decades. They never expected. So young and so accomplished, the crowd murmured in awe as Jason, now inside the venue, walked on unimpeded. With the mask on his face and the title of Mr. G, people parted before him, their eyes wide with shock. Among them were Brooke Lynn and Hannah Chun. Both women stared, their faces masks of disbelief. Neither had ever imagined that the notorious, never-before-seen Mr. G would be a handsome young man. And yet, why did his build feel so familiar? Brooke and Hannah frowned, lost in thought. From the back of the room, Clara's eyes narrowed dangerously. Jason, is that you? She whispered, a breathtaking smile curving her lips. Victor Sterling, standing in the crowd, spotted Jason at the center of everyone's attention. His face lit up, and he immediately pushed his way through. Mr. G, Mr. G, you're finally here. The other executives and I have been waiting for you all evening. As he spoke, Victor greedily sized Jason up. The young man before him was tall and carried himself with an air of brilliant competence. He was, in short, handsome and powerful. The black mask only added to his mystique. Victor was internally stunned. The man behind the meteoric rise of G Corp was just a kid? Impossible. A man in his 20s couldn't have that kind of strategic mind. He had to have more powerful forces behind him, likely from overseas. Maybe he's the heir to some foreign financial titan, just testing the waters in New York, Victor thought, becoming more certain by the second. His respect for Jason deepened. Mr. G, you're truly a prodigy, he gushed, laying the flattery on thick. The people around them murmured in agreement, all thinking the same thing as Victor. Jason just smirked, pitching his voice lower. Just lucky, I suppose. His casual, dismissive tone reached Brooke, who was sitting not far away. She rolled her eyes in disgust. He's more full of it than a garbage bag. So he has a powerful family. So what? He's nothing compared to Jason. Though she was shocked, she put on a mask of indifference. Hannah, too, averted her gaze. She had no interest in anyone but Jason. Oh, Mr. Gee, you're too modest. Victor, who had never met Jason before, saw nothing unusual and continued to fawn over him. To create the illusion that they were close, he pointedly guided Jason to a seat beside him. Jason found the whole charade amusing. For the sake of the game he had planned, he played along and sat down. No way. Mr. G is actually partnering with Victor Sterling. If that's the case, the Sterling family fortune is in real jeopardy. Seeing the two of them together, the crowd's expression soured. Their gazes toward Jason now held a hint of disdain. After all, Victor's treatment of his own daughter, Clara, was infamous in their circles. Jason, however, was unbothered and settled into his seat. Victor leaned in, explaining the situation. Mr. G, I don't know if you were briefed before you arrived, but this auction is for the next phase of a project launched by the Sioux Corporation, a foreign enterprise. With your international connections, you must be aware that Julian Sioux wants to expand his family's empire into New York. This is their first test, a large-scale partnership project just outside the city. If we can secure this project and get in with the Sioux family, our future will be limitless, he said, his voice trembling with excitement, completely missing the way Jason's eyes hardened under the mask. The Sioux Corporation? It's them. Life really did have a twisted sense of humor. Well then, this Julian Sioux must be truly formidable, Jason sneered, his voice dropping several degrees. He hadn't paid much attention to this auction at first. It hadn't originally been hosted by the Sioux family. They had only taken it over recently. He'd been so busy that he'd only just found out. The irony was almost laughable, but his hands clenched into tight fists. Years ago, Vivian had been adopted by the Sioux Corporation's family. They had been in the same orphanage, and at first, the Sioux family had wanted to adopt him. Ahem, of course, but Mr. G, you're a titan among men yourself. Victor sensed the chill in Jason's voice and gave a nervous laugh. How about I tell you a little more about Mr. Sioux's background? He tried to change the subject, but Jason cut him off with a cold glance. No need. He and I are old acquaintances. Jason's eyes narrowed, a palpable coldness radiating from him. Hearing this, Victor was more convinced than ever of Jason's status as the heir to some great power. He dared to mock even a man like Julian Sioux. He had definitely picked the right partner. Meanwhile, Brooke was sitting in her chair, staring blankly at the trifold phone she had given Jason. Mr. Lee, look at this phone. Is it broken? She mumbled, her face dark. Mr. Lee glanced at it and shook his head. No, Miss Lynn, the screen is just a bit cracked. If you don't want it, you can just throw it away. The phone, true to its design, was remarkably durable. It had survived being submerged in water and dropped several times without breaking. Then why aren't I getting any text from Jason? She asked, a question that left him speechless. Miss Lynn, perhaps it's time you focused your attention elsewhere. Mr. Lee sighed, trying to reason with her. The family's wish is for you to build a relationship with the people from G Corp. If you don't, I'm afraid they won't allow you to continue searching for Jason after the auction. He silently shook his head. Jason is on the run. Of course he's not going to text her. Has she lost her mind? For a man who didn't believe in superstition, he was seriously considering hiring an exorcist. Brooke was initially reluctant to approach Mr. G, but the threat of being barred from finding Jason was the final straw. She conceded. Mr. Lee, this is the last time, she said, her face grim. The absolute last time I compromise with the family. She stood, lifting the hem of her gown, and marched toward Jason as if she were heading to her own execution. Jason, sitting in his seat, suddenly saw Brooke stalking toward him, her red eyes burning with an expression that screamed murder. Crap, has she figured me out? His first instinct was to run, but he remembered his new identity and forced himself to stay put. He watched as Brooke, her beautiful face a mask of fury, sat down next to him. He feigned composure. Brooke stared straight ahead, her voice cold and flat. I will not marry you. The abrupt statement left Jason completely bewildered. What did you say? I said, the family has already rejected the idea of our marriage. I will not marry you. Only then did she turn her head to look at him. For a moment, Jason was so overjoyed he could have burst out laughing. Really? He barely managed to keep his voice from cracking. In that case, Miss Lynn, could you perhaps put that in writing? I'm afraid you'll go back on your word. What did you say? Brooke shot to her feet, her face flushing crimson with rage. I am Brooke Lynn of the Lynn family. You think I would go back on my word? In your dreams. She was livid. This man wanted it in writing? Did he think she was that pathetic? Besides, she wanted nothing to do with anyone from G-Corp. But Jason was persistent. So will you or won't you? If she didn't, he knew she was fully capable of changing her mind. You. Brooke was about to explode. She raised her hand to slap him across the face. On pure reflex, Jason's hand shot up and caught her wrist. No need for that, Miss Lynn. If you won't, you won't. Why resort to violence? A flicker of shock crossed Brooke's face. That movement, the speed with which he caught her hand, was so much like Jason. She froze for a second. Jason realized his slip-up and quickly released her wrist. Forget it then, he said, adopting a cool and dismissive tone. I have no interest in you either, Miss Lynn. You may go. But Brooke stood her ground. Take off your mask. Let me see you. She bit her lip, her face a thundercloud as she stared at him. Jason's heart pounded. No, I'll take it off for you. Brooke lunged for his face. Jason's pupils constricted. He turned to Mr. Lee. This is a business auction. Is this how the Lynn family conducts itself? He snapped, feigning outrage. Mr. Lee immediately intervened, pulling Brooke away. My apologies, Mr. G. My niece has been emotionally unstable lately. I'm so sorry for the disturbance, he explained, struggling to restrain her, sweat beading on his forehead. Miss Lynn, please, just give me a break. He was at his wit's end. He told her to build a good relationship, not start a fist fight. Brooke's face was red with frustration, her chest heaving. He's Jason. She hadn't seen his face, but that movement, it had to be him. Mr. Lee reached out and felt his niece's forehead. You don't have a fever. Why are you talking nonsense? The head of G-Corp being Jason Miller? That was the most ridiculous thing he'd ever heard. Sure, the build was similar, but to achieve so much in New York in just a few short years, the man had to have powerful foreign backing. Unless he was some kind of monster. He tried to explain this to Brooke, but she didn't hear a word, her eyes fixed on Jason. Her gut feeling was never wrong. You can play your little games, she thought fiercely. I'll rip that stupid mask off your face sooner or later. Then everyone would see the truth. Nearby, Hannah-chan watched Brooke's dramatic outburst and sighed. TSK. Another episode. From the back of the room, Clara watched with a cold smile, her eyes narrowed. She thought Brooke might show some restraint at an event hosted by the Sue family. Apparently not. Still, her accusation that Mr. G was Jason only deepened Clara's own suspicions. Her gaze locked onto Mr. G's figure. She truly couldn't wait for the truth to be revealed. Why do I have such a bad feeling about this? Jason fidgeted in his seat, an unsettling feeling crawling up his spine, as if someone was watching him. But when he glanced back, he saw nothing. If he didn't have a show to watch unfold, he would have bolted already. Okay, I definitely have to get out of here as soon as this auction is over. My sixth sense is never wrong. Just then, thankfully, Julian Sue finally took the stage. While most auctions were formal, sit-down affairs, the Sue Air had a different style. The venue was set up more like a gala, creating a relaxed atmosphere. The spotlight focused on the stage. Thank you for your patience, a clear, smiling voice announced as everyone turned their attention forward. The auction will now officially begin. Under the lights, a man in a cream-white suit and gold-rimmed glasses walked out. He was meticulously dressed, around 25 or 26, with handsome features and an air of refined elegance. A warm smile played on his lips, but his shrewd eyes, even behind the glasses that softened their intensity, betrayed a deep, calculating nature. From his seat in the audience, a cold smile formed under Jason's mask. After all these years, they finally met again. The Sue family. Brother. In a New York hotel room, Bianca Sterling was curled into a ball on the bed, her body ice cold. She murmured his name between clenched teeth, her eyes squeezed shut as if in great pain. Images of Clara in critical condition and the fear in Jason's eyes swirled in her mind. A tear slowly escaped the corner of her eye. In a final moment of chaotic consciousness, she fumbled for her phone, opened Jason's contact, and pressed the call button. Back at the auction, Jason's phone vibrated abruptly. He frowned and reached for it, but Victor Sterling stopped him. Mr. G, the auction has started. Phone calls are prohibited now. Perhaps you could wait until it's over, Victor said awkwardly, gesturing toward the security guards. To make a call now, he would have to step outside. Jason scowled, but seeing the guards, he put his phone away. The bidding was about to start. In the hotel room, the call went unanswered. Bianca could hold on no longer and sank into a deep unconsciousness. Just as she did, the door to her room swung open silently, and two dark figures slipped inside. It was the same men in black from before. "What's going on?" Her condition was supposed to be stable, one of them muttered, pulling out a scanner to check Bianca's vital signs. "Her heart rate is erratic. Looks like another relapse." "Give her another dose of sedative," the other said, producing a syringe. "Report to headquarters. Asset 032 is currently unfit to remain in New York. We're bringing her back for a few days of recalibration." After injecting the sedative, one of them lifted Bianca's unconscious form and carried her out of the hotel. At the auction, Jason put his phone away but couldn't shake a feeling of unease. He leaned toward his comms and whispered to Sprite, "Check who just called me." Then, he turned his attention back to the stage. The auction was straightforward. Whoever could offer the most resources and the highest price would win the right to partner with the Sue family. The attendees had already been pre-screened as qualified candidates. The setup felt more like a high-stakes sale than a partnership pitch. Next to Julian Sue was a podium with a gavel. A beautiful, long-legged woman stood on stage, hammer in hand. "Ladies and gentlemen, the minimum investment for the Sue family's project is $5 million, she announced. "The auction begins now." "Do I hear $5 million? Jason noticed they each had a bidding paddle. He raised an eyebrow. Beside him, Victor Sterling could hardly contain himself. $5.5 million. After shouting his bid, Victor turned to Jason with a triumphant grin, as if to say, "See how quick I was? Aren't you impressed?" Jason's mouth twitched. He felt the eyes of everyone in the room, including Brooke and Hannah, snap toward them. He let out a cold chuckle. "Mr. Sterling, has the Sterling family approved that budget? This old bastard still has that kind of money? How much did he steal from the family? And he only gave me $3 million? Jason suddenly felt like he'd been lowballed. Victor looked shifty. "Ahem. Once Clara is out of the picture, the family's finances will naturally fall under my control. I just need you to front the money for now, Mr. G. Don't you worry," he added hastily. "As soon as the Sterling matter is settled, I'll transfer the money to you immediately. This is a partnership, after all. You have to put something in to get a bigger return later. Isn't that right?" Victor painted his grand vision with an air of absolute entitlement. Jason raised an eyebrow, feigning understanding while mentally cursing the old fool 100 times over. What a brilliant scheme. So that's why this old bastard wanted to partner with me. He's broke and want me to pay for everything. He was dreaming. It seemed Clara's people weren't to be underestimated. Even with her out of commission, Victor could only scrape together a few million. In that case, he would be happy to play along. "You make a fine point, Mr. Sterling." "I agree," Jason said, a deliberate smirk on his lips. Victor's anxiety instantly turned to elation. "I knew it. Mr. G, you are a man of great vision." From the back of the room, Clara watched Jason's back, a chill creeping into her gaze. Helping Victor win the Sue partnership was tantamount to giving him the weapon he needed to use against her. While she didn't consider Victor a real threat, this Mr. G's actions sparked a murderous intent within her. For a moment, she even began to doubt her own judgment. Perhaps this Mr. G really wasn't Jason. He knew everything she had suffered at Victor's hands. He would never do this to her. "Ma'am, should we?" Ava began, standing beside her, but she trailed off, not noticing the blood-red fury in Clara's eyes or the almost imperceptible tremor in her shoulders. "He would never do this to me. So, he can't possibly be Jason. Secure every exit." Clara's voice trembled with rage. "When this auction is over, capture him." She needed to see his face for herself. The chilling, suffocating, killing intent radiating from her boss made Ava nod quickly. "Yes, ma'am." Up front, Jason was oblivious to the storm brewing behind him. $6 million. $6.5 million. The bidding continued. Just as Victor was about to jump in again, Jason raised his paddle. $6,500,100. He beat Victor to the punch. The room fell into a dead, stunned silence. Every eye in the place swiveled back to Jason. On stage, Julian Sue frowned slightly, his confusion deepening as he looked at Jason. He had researched every major company in New York. This was the first time Mr. G had shown his face, a man of his supposed stature making such a bid. Was he deliberately trying to sabotage the event? At that thought, Julian's expression turned dangerous. Hannah, too, was watching. She couldn't shake the feeling that this Mr. G was familiar, but she couldn't place it. "You bid how much?" Brooke sputtered, spitting out a mouthful of water, her face a mask of shock. Was this guy a comedian? Or is he just here to cause trouble? Jason, however, looked completely unfazed. "Mr. Sue only stated a minimum bid, not a minimum raise, did he?" he said, his eyes locking with Julian's, a clear note of challenge in his voice. Of course, Mr. G is correct. There is no minimum raise. Please, bid as you wish. I will not interfere. Julian's eyes narrowed, but he quickly smoothed his expression back into a professional smile, though his gaze on Jason had taken on a dark edge. Jason saw it and remained unperturbed. He knew Julian was furious, but at the moment, G Corp was the only viable partner in the room. The smaller companies couldn't offer much, and the established giants like the Sterling and Lin families would see the Sioux Corporation's entry as a threat to their own interests. So, even if he raised the bid by a dime each time, the Sioux family would have to smile and take it. 7 million, 7.5, 8 million, 10 million. The bidding continued, with no one daring to copy his stunt. The price climbed in steady $500,000 increments. Victor nervously tugged on Jason's sleeve. Mr. G, that's not how you bid. You'll offend the Sioux family. Then how should I bid? Jason feigned ignorance. Victor was frantic. You have to raise by at least $500,000 at a time. Mr. G, you can't do this, he whispered urgently. In the back, Clara's lips curved into a playful smile. Jason decided he'd had his fun. The bidding had now reached $10.5 million. He raised his paddle again. 30 million. A collective gasp went through the room. Victor's jaw dropped. Brooke and the others stared in disbelief. Only the auctioneer on stage was thrilled. 30 million. The dashing Mr. G has offered an investment of $30 million. Do I hear any higher? She laid the flattery on thick. Victor was practically tearing his hair out. No, that's wrong. That's too much. Damn it. This project won't even clear 20 million in profit. His absolute limit was 20 million, a price he was willing to pay just to get his foot in the door with the Sioux family. Was this Mr. G out his mind? Bidding 30 million? He was going to lose a fortune. Is it too much? Jason feigned surprise, then patted Victor's arm reassuringly. Don't worry, Mr. Sterling. You hold on to my paddle and my card. The extra 10 million is on me. As he spoke, he grandly handed his card to Victor. Really? Victor was so moved he was on the verge of tears. Mr. G, you are a true gentleman. You're the best friend I've ever had. Of course. Jason thumped his chest in a gesture of magnanimity. Brooke watched, her brow furrowed. In her memory, Jason had never been so generous. Could it be that this man really wasn't him? Clara, too, was becoming suspicious. Jason glanced around, then stood up. Mr. Sterling, I'm just going to use the restroom. I'll be right back. You hold on to my card, and if the price goes up, just keep bidding. He said it all with a calm, confident air. Victor was a little nervous about him leaving, but then he thought, the man has a whole corporation. It's not like he can just disappear. His fears were instantly assuaged. Of course, Mr. G, go right ahead. I'll handle everything, he promised, completely missing the triumphant smirk on Jason's face. That was exactly what he was going to do. Disappear, and he wasn't coming back. Suppressing a smile, Jason walked quickly toward the restroom. Brooke's eyes narrowed. She stood up and followed him. She was going to find out just what this seemingly idiotic man was up to. Yes, officer, I'd like to report a crime. Victor Sterling of the Sterling Corporation has embezzled $3 million. That's right. I have evidence. The moment Jason stepped into the men's room, he dialed the NYPD. He immediately forwarded the transaction records of the money Victor had sent him. He was confident that with this evidence, any investigation would confirm Victor's guilt. Even if Victor tried to cover his tracks, Clara's people would never let him get away with it. With Clara out of the picture, Victor was his only remaining problem at the Sterling estate. Taking him out would give him some peace of mind. It was a classic backstab. Thanks for your trust, Mr. Sterling. Consider it an expensive lesson, Jason thought with a cold smile. He reached through the bathroom's open window and pulled in a black plastic bag. Inside was the compact handgun Sprite had prepared for him. He was so focused that he didn't notice Brooke Lynn hesitating just outside the men's room door. Ahem. She stood there, her face flushed, torn, to go in or not to go in. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from inside, the sound of porcelain shattering. Brooke's head snapped up. In a flash, she was at the door. She burst in to see Jason, still masked, standing on the toilet and trying to climb out the window. The crash had been the toilet tank lid shattering under his weight. What the? This is the men's room. Jason yelped when he saw her. He gave a powerful heave and pulled himself up onto the windowsill. Just as he was about to jump, a small hand shot out and grabbed the back of his suit jacket. You're not going anywhere. Get back here. Brooke had lunged in and caught him. A wave of triumphant joy washed over her. You think you can get away? It's a good thing I came in to check. Jason, it is you, isn't it? Say something. She yanked hard, trying to pull him down. In the next second, something cold and hard pressed against her forehead. Miss Lynn, this is your last warning. Let go. A man's icy voice came from above. Brooke froze, a flicker of shock in her eyes. He had a gun, so that was his game. He wasn't just a fool. He was armed and dangerous. But she was Brooke Lynn. No, go ahead, shoot. We'll die here together today, she snarled, ignoring the gun as she reached for his mask. You're insane, Jason cursed. He'd had enough. He shrugged out of the suit jacket Brooke was clinging to, then shoved her away with one hand. Jason, by the time Brooke scrambled back to her feet, he was gone. Having jumped out the window, all that remained was the abandoned jacket on the floor. Ark, she screamed in frustration. Her eyes then caught sight of a crumpled piece of paper that had fallen out of the jacket pocket. Frowning, Brooke picked it up and unfolded it, and went completely berserk. Professor Chun, will you be my girlfriend? It was a love letter to Hannah Chun, signed by Jason. Her suspicions were right. That Mr. G was Jason all along, and the date on the letter was from years ago. That bastard Jason had actually been involved with that old woman, Hannah Chun, and it had started even before he met her. Ark, Brooke crumpled the letter in her fist, her whole body trembling with rage. Jason, I'm going to kill you. She shredded the letter to pieces and stormed out of the bathroom, heading for the exit. As for why she didn't just climb out the window like Jason, she couldn't. Most of her bodyguards were stationed at the main entrance. If she ran out now, she might still be able to catch him. She had no idea that Jason was already moving at top speed. He was back in the car, where Sprite, having finished school for the day, was waiting for him, eating a newly purchased durian and playing a game on her phone. As she played, however, an anomaly on the surveillance feed on her other phone caught her attention. She had hacked into the cameras around the hospital to keep an eye on Clara. Now, she noticed that a black car had appeared on the feed for the fourth time. Frowning, she zoomed in for a closer look and realized with a jolt that the feed was a looped recording. We're screwed, Sprite muttered. This was the main entrance to Clara's hospital. To go to such lengths to tamper with the feed could only mean one thing. Clara was never in danger. It was all a ruse to deceive people. Go now. Just as Sprite came to this realization, Jason threw himself into the car. Huh? Big bro, you already knew. Sprite looked up, about to praise his foresight, when she saw Jason's disheveled state. What happened to you? Did a dog chase you? Yes. A mad dog. Jason nodded frantically. Hurry. Drive. That psycho Brooke Lynn is coming. Oh, so you didn't know about Clara faking her critical condition. Sprite dropped another bombshell, earning a stunned look from Jason. A dark cloud passed over Jason's face. What did you just say? Clara's not dying. Nope. She was faking it, Sprite confirmed calmly. Jason's world tilted on its axis. Go. Floor it to 180. Get me to the airport. No wonder he'd had such a bad feeling at the auction. Those two women were both completely insane. If they caught him, they'd tear him apart. Run. He had to run. Get out of the country. But Sprite hesitated. Big bro, if you run, people at the auction will notice Mr. G is gone. Won't that psycho Clara figure out your Mr. G? And then, as long as her company exists, it's only a matter of time before she finds you. Right? You can run, but you can't hide. While their company was doing well, if they truly pissed off those two lunatics from the Sterling and Lynn families, she wouldn't put it past them to burn everything to the ground in a fit of mutually assured destruction. Sprite shrugged, as if to say, what can you do? Jason got the distinct feeling she was enjoying this a little too much. He ground his back teeth together, then slowly turned his gaze to Sprite. Then, I'll just have to sacrifice you, Sprite. Back at the auction, the bidding had concluded. Victor Sterling, with his bid of $30 million, had won the partnership with the Sue family. Julian Sue was even looking at him with a newfound respect. He never thought that the useless Victor Sterling could get Mr. G to pony up that kind of cash. Perhaps he had underestimated him. Victor was basking in the feeling. He'd been a failure his whole life, but today he had finally stood tall. But when Julian asked him to pay the initial deposit and sign the contract, Victor tried to use the card and discovered with horror that it was a novelty, edible fake bank card. Impossible. This can't be happening. What's going on? Victor's face twisted in panic. The rest of the crowd, however, was thoroughly enjoying the spectacle. Clara, who had been sitting in the back with a grim expression, finally allowed her features to relax. This Mr. G's way of doing things. It really is quite similar to his, she murmured with a faint smile, then glanced at Ava. Go check the men's room. I suspect our Mr. G has already fled. Huh. Ava, surprised, quickly hurried toward the restroom. Clara's gaze returned to Victor. No, Mr. Gee, that bastard, he dared to trick me. Is he insane? Victor was a mixture of shock and fury. He couldn't understand it. G Corp had a massive presence in New York. They couldn't just run and hide. Why would they pull a stunt like this? Besides, wasn't a partnership with the Sue family beneficial for G Corp too? What he hadn't considered was that Mr. G was Jason, and by not partnering with Victor, Jason was in line to inherit half the Sterling fortune. As for not being able to hide, Victor would have to be in a position to look for him, and right now, it seemed his opportunities were about to run out. Mr. Sterling, you're not playing games with me, are you? Julie and Sue's face darkened as Victor fumbled, unable to produce the payment. Just then, a woman's clear, cold laugh cut through the room from the back. Mr. Sue, my father has always had mental health issues. I apologize for the disturbance today, but I must admit, it was quite an entertaining show. The voice was cool and sharp, like the faint scent of a rose in a briar patch. Beautiful, but chilling. A shiver ran through the venue. Everyone turned in shock toward the source of the voice. There stood Clara, resplendent in a black gown covered in crushed diamonds. Her presence was commanding, her figure exquisite, and her beautiful face, framed by long, dark hair, was devastating. Her dark, glass-like eyes were filled with a lazy, satisfied look, as if she were a predator who had just finished a meal. Yet she radiated an innate, noble authority. Her contemptuous gaze swept over them all, as if she were looking down at ants. And not a single person dared to question it. The ruthless matriarch of the Sterling family, Clara, wasn't dying. She was here, radiant and very much alive. A single glance from her was enough to make people avert their eyes. That's impossible. How can you not be dead? Victor's legs gave out, and he collapsed to the floor, the successive blows pushing him to the brink of a breakdown. Clara's eyes were like ice, the curve of her lips a mocking slash. What's the matter? Seeing me alive. Are you disappointed, my dear, blood-related father? She had been disappointed by him countless times. Any father-daughter affection had long since withered away. All that was left was cold, hard ice. Victor saw the clear, killing intent in her eyes, and a primal fear seized him. Clara, you calculating bitch. This was all your plan, wasn't it? You already have everything from the family. What more could you possibly want now? He shrieked, finally realizing he had been caught in a trap from the very beginning. But Clara didn't give him a chance to recover. Noisy, she said, her red lips barely moving. Instantly, several NYPD officers stepped forward and cuffed Victor. Mr. Sterling, you're under arrest for suspicion of embezzling $3 million. We have an anonymous tip and the corresponding evidence. You're coming with us. A pair of silver handcuffs snapped onto Victor's wrists. $3 million. Victor panicked completely. Daughter, save me. I'm your father. He thought he had nothing left to lose, but now he realized Clara wanted him dead. $3 million. He'd be locked away for life. He didn't want to die. He couldn't die. He still had a son. Victor felt his knees, begging and crying. Clara didn't even spare him a glance. Father, this is the last time I'll call you that. You seem to have forgotten the day my mother was on her deathbed. I knelt and begged you just like this. A trace of red appeared in her beautiful eyes. But then a thought occurred to her. An anonymous tip? That was unexpected. Could have been Mr. G. You. Victor was speechless as the officers dragged him away. Julian Sue had watched the entire scene unfold. His eyes raked over Clara's slender form, and a thick interest sparked within him. Miss Sterling, sending your own father to prison. You are truly an admirable woman. In my entire life, I have always enjoyed making friends with beautiful women like you, Miss Sterling. Allow me to introduce myself. He extended his hand, his smile meant to be charming. Clara's only reply was an icy glare. Get lost. If you don't want any trouble, Mr. Sue, I suggest you tread lightly in New York, she said coldly. This cake is not for everyone to eat. With that, she turned and swept out of the room. Julian stood frozen in place, his expression slowly darkening. Not for everyone to eat. He was going to devour it whole. At the men's room door, Ava hesitated, a slight blush on her cheeks. Finally, she knocked. Ahem. Mr. G, are you in there? I need you to come out so we could discuss the partnership. Knock, knock. There was no response. She frowned. Just as she was about to kick the door in, a man's voice suddenly called out. Stop knocking. My stomach is killing me. Go buy me some medicine. We can talk about the partnership later. It was Mr. G's voice, and he sounded like he was in pain. Ava was taken aback. Mr. G, what did you say? Wait, didn't this guy just give Victor a fake bank card? I thought he'd run off, but he's still here. I said, get me some medicine. Are you deaf? Or do you want to come in here and see for yourself? The man roared from inside the bathroom. A faint, foul odor wafted out. That was all the confirmation Ava needed. Oh, okay, mister. Gee, you just wait there. She gritted her teeth and returned to Clara's side, reporting what had happened. Ma'am, Mr. G is still in there. It seems he ate something bad. He's really in there? Clara's brow furrowed. She didn't believe it. Her instincts were never wrong. But just as she stood up to check for herself, a security guard rushed in. Ma'am, we found Mr. Sterling. The guard's face was alight with excitement. The news instantly recaptured Clara's full attention. Really? Her eyes lit up with a surprise she couldn't hide. Where is he? On a nearby highway. It looks like he's heading for the airport. The airport? Are you sure you're not mistaken? Clara's eyes narrowed. The guard nodded emphatically. Absolutely sure, ma'am. The traffic cameras caught him. Here's the picture. He handed a tablet to Clara. When she saw the clear image of Jason's face behind the wheel, a cold smile spread across her lips, and her voice dropped several degrees. It seems he's trying to run. She cast one last glance in the direction of the men's room, then turned and swept toward the exit. After him, inside the restroom, Sprite held a durian in one hand and watched the door. Hearing the footsteps fade away, she checked the call log on her phone. Big bro, I think they're gone, but you better drive fast. I bet Clara has figured it out and is on her way to you now. As she spoke, she looked down at the durian in her hand, and suddenly, it didn't smell so good anymore. In that critical moment, she had slipped back into the restroom and connected her phone to a small Bluetooth speaker, playing a recording of Jason's voice to create the illusion that he was still inside. In reality, Jason had already changed his clothes, swapped cars, and was flooring it down the highway. I know. Damn it, that woman is insane. Jason hung up on Sprite and glanced in his rearview mirror. Behind him, a red Ferrari was weaving recklessly through traffic. Brooke Lynn, still in her fishtail gown, was at the wheel. The wind whipped her long, dark hair into a frenzy. Her stunning face was contorted with rage, her lips bitten raw, and her eyes were a furious, bloodshot red. Jason, I'm going to kill you, she was chanting over and over like a mantra, completely ignoring the other cars. The Ferrari was moving at a terrifying speed, its front bumper already smashed. She was getting closer. Holy crap, Jason cursed. Insane. They were all completely insane. He forgot about the speed limit and slammed his foot on the accelerator. He didn't know if Brooke had a driver's license, but he sure as hell didn't. Two unlicensed drivers in a high-speed chase quickly attracted the attention of the NYPD. 4 or 5 patrol cars, lights flashing, began to close in. The sound of sirens and blaring horns filled the air. Vehicle ahead, pull over immediately. Pull over now, an officer yelled through a megaphone. Jason didn't dare stop. Can't you guys go after her first? He screamed internally. That lunatic is practically breaking the sound barrier. But a moment later, Brooke's actions served as a grim reminder of the dangers of reckless driving. Boom! Just as Jason accelerated, a deafening crash echoed from behind him. A black sedan, unable to brake in time, slammed into the back of Brooke's Ferrari. The explosion of sound was so violent that Jason's own car swerved. In his rearview mirror, he saw the Ferrari's rear end crumple. The windows shattered, and smoke billowed from the hood. The car was a wreck. Jason's pupils constricted. Because Brooke had been so close behind him and his vision was sharp, he could see her inside, her head bleeding as she slumped unconscious over the steering wheel. He hesitated. The car was mangled. Brooke's condition was unknown. If he ran now, and she died, what then? But a call from Sprite snapped him out of it. Forget about Brooke. I just checked the feeds. Clara is chasing you. She's not far behind. You need to worry about escaping her first. The words were a bucket of cold water. With one last look at Brooke's wrecked car, Jason slammed his foot on the gas and sped toward the airport. But as he drove, he pulled out his phone and sent a message to Mr. Lee with Brooke's location. If you want to save your precious miss, get here now. Any later, and it might be too late. After a year together, it was impossible to say he felt nothing for her. She was a tyrant, yes, but there were moments when she had been almost cute. And compared to Clara, who had whipped him bloody, Brooke had never even managed to land a single slap. Any normal person would call 911 for a stranger in a car wreck. He was no different. Can't you go any faster? You useless idiot. Clara snapped from the backseat of her car. Watching the speedometer refuse to climb. Even she, usually so composed, had resorted to cursing. The bodyguard behind the wheel was sweating, his body trembling. Ma'am, there seems to be an accident up ahead. The traffic is at a standstill. And besides, he stammered, even if we went faster, mister. Sterling is already way ahead of us. There's no way we can catch him now. He gestured to the wreckage blocking the road. Ahead of them, a red Ferrari and a black sedan were tangled together, thick smoke pouring into the air. The scene was chaotic. Clara instantly recognized the car. That's Brooklyn's car. No wonder Brooke had disappeared halfway through the auction. She had gone after Jason herself, behind Clara's back. But as she saw Brooke being pulled from the wreckage, her forehead stained with blood, she fell silent. If this road is blocked, why don't you find another one? Ava snapped at the driver, seeing the dark expression on Clara's face. We'll go straight to the airport. We can cut him off there. I can't get around it, the bodyguard said, looking helpless. Easy for you to say. We're all going to the same place. Do you have wings? That's when Ava, a born and bred New Yorker, saw her chance to shine. Ma'am, I know a shortcut. In addition to her combat training, she was an avid motorcyclist and a seasoned KTM rider. I know a lot of shortcuts, she said, but this one is a little scary. Clara didn't care. Go. Soon, Clara discovered that a little scary was an understatement. Ava was leading them on a motorcycle, cutting a path through a dense, dark forest that bordered an old cemetery. In that moment, Clara realized she knew very little about her assistant. But as long as it meant catching Jason, she would endure it. Meanwhile, Jason gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. Taking advantage of the fact that all the police cars were swarming around Brooke's accident, he broke through the cordon and reached the airport. He parked the car, and, just to be safe, he swapped his jacket for another one. After a quick look around to make sure no one was watching, he pulled the cap down low over his eyes and walked into the terminal. The airport was calm and orderly, with no sign of trouble. The knot of anxiety in Jason's stomach began to loosen. He hadn't had time to book a ticket, and seeing the ticket counter was nearly empty, he walked over. Yes, are there any flights to Mexico left? Jason asked, holding out his ID and passport, his face hidden by the brim of his cap. The ticket agent shook her head. No, sir, none. Jason was surprised. It wasn't exactly peak tourist season. Undeterred, he pressed on. What about anywhere else? Any international flight will do. Is there anything? I'm sorry, sir, the agent said again, shaking her head. All flights for the next 24 hours are completely sold out. The words hit Jason like a physical blow. Just then, a cool, melodic female voice spoke from right behind him. Looking for a ticket, little one? I have one right here. Do you want it? The sound of her voice sent a jolt through Jason's body. He froze, feeling like prey that had just been spotted by a predator. An icy chill crawled up his spine. He turned his head slowly, stiffly, and found himself staring into a beautiful, glacial face. The last bit of hope in his heart withered and died. Clara! Clara! Jason ground out her name, his hand tightening around the small handgun in his pocket. Even though he knew she had been faking her recovery, he couldn't help but be stunned. This demoness truly was the woman who had single-handedly resurrected the Sterling family. She had even managed to deceive her own people. She had even convinced him. And here she was, not dead, not even a scratch on her. Surprised to see me? Clara raised an eyebrow, a smirk playing on her red lips. The frantic chase had left her looking slightly disheveled, but the black gown against her beautiful face only made her look more coldly stunning. She held up a thick stack of tickets. Husband, you seem to be in a hurry to buy a ticket. Where are you going? As it happens, I bought out every seat on every recent flight. Tell me where you want to go, and we'll go together. Her smile was a beautiful, terrifying thing that didn't reach her eyes. Behind her, Ava and a squad of bodyguards had sealed off the entire area. Not even a fly could get out. The police cars that had been chasing Jason now pulled up, and the officers swarmed in. Mr. Miller, you're suspected of reckless driving and endangerment. We need to take you in for questioning. Please cooperate. The NYPD surrounded him. He was completely trapped. But seeing the police, Jason felt a strange sense of relief. Being arrested by the cops was infinitely better than being captured by Clara. He eagerly held out his hands. I'll cooperate. I'll absolutely cooperate. He practically shoved his wrists toward the handcuffs. The officers were baffled. They'd never seen anyone so desperate to be arrested. But Clara's next words sent Jason plummeting from the clouds back to the abyss. My apologies, officers. My husband was just throwing a little tantrum. I'm sorry for the trouble. She stepped forward, her beautiful eyes half-lidded as she stood between Jason and the police. But I'm afraid you won't be taking him today. I've already spoken with your captain. Her voice was calm, but it held an undeniable authority. The officers exchanged glances. As Jason watched in horrified disbelief, they backed away. Of course, Miss Sterling. We'll get back to our duties then. You and Mr. Sterling have a good talk. You know how it is with married couples. Fight at the head of the bed, make up at the foot. We won't disturb you." The officers, not daring to offend Clara, turned and left. Jason stared at their retreating backs, his throat so tight he couldn't make a sound. "No, they just left. What's wrong? Are you that desperate to leave my side?" Clara asked, watching his longing gaze follow the officers. She narrowed her eyes and reached out to touch his face. Jason's expression turned to ice. He slapped her hand away. "Miss Sterling, must you be so ruthless? To you, I'm just a tool for producing an heir. You want a child? You can get one with anyone. Why are you so obsessed with me?" he snarled. As she stared at him, stunned, he pulled out the small handgun. "Let me go, and I'll pretend none of this ever happened." His eyes were cold as he pointed the gun directly at her. He didn't notice the flicker of sorrow that crossed her face. "I never thought that one day you would point a gun at me." She suddenly let out a soft, sharp laugh, but her eyes were turning red. As Jason watched in shock, she took his hand, the one holding the gun, and pressed the barrel against her own chest. In her life, she had met so many people who wanted her dead. Every one of them had coveted her power and her wealth, cold and heartless. In that cruel world, she had grown just as cold. But deep down, she had always hoped for someone who would stand by her side, no matter what. After losing her mother at a young age, no one had ever loved her. The day Jason had dispelled the cryotoxin from her body, she had thought they were husband and wife. She thought he had feelings for her. Otherwise, why would he have given up a chance to escape to stay by her side? That was why she had been so desperate to hold on to that small sliver of warmth. But now, the person who had personally saved her life was pointing a gun at her heart. Her chest tightened, and she could barely breathe. "I thought you were different from them." "Go on," she said, her smile radiant and terrible. She held his hand steady. "The heart is right here, Jason. You saved my life once. If you want me to die now, pull the trigger. We can end this together. How about it?" Her face was a mask of sickly pallor, the corners of her eyes stained red. The wind teased a strand of hair across her face, her shattered gaze both insane and bloodthirsty, beautiful to the point of suffocation. She stared at him, her eyes resolute, as she took a step closer, then another, as if she were fully prepared to die with him. It was a look of absolute, frenzied devotion. "Clara, you're insane." Jason stared at her, utterly defeated by her madness. "Do you want to die that badly?" He snatched the gun back, terrified that in her crazed state, she might actually pull the trigger herself. Clara watched his panicked reaction. She brought her fingers, which still held the lingering scent of him, to her lips and licked them. "You can't bring yourself to kill me, can you?" She smiled. Jason's scalp prickled. "Clara, what the hell do you want from me?" At this point, he was tempted to point the gun at his own head. "Damn it. If you won't die, I will. Simple. Come back with me. Marry me," Clara said, her smile victorious as she held out her hand to him. Jason sneered. "Go back with you? Are you sure you won't kill me in one of your fits of madness? Live under your thumb again, not even allowed to leave the house." Was he crazy? After everything he'd done to escape, he was just going to go back? Then what do you want? Clara's brow furrowed in displeasure. Jason paused. He knew he wasn't getting away today. He might as well use this opportunity to negotiate better terms. With that in mind, he spoke again. "Fine, I'll go back with you. But from this day forward, our previous contract is void. All 3 rules are canceled. You cannot restrict my freedom to go where I want or see who I want." He watched her face as he spoke. As expected, Clara's expression darkened. But in the end, she nodded. "Fine, I agree." She knew if she didn't, even if she dragged him back today, he would just find another way to run. So what if she agreed for now? Once he was back in her house, the power would still be in her hands. With that thought, Clara gave a soft humph and whispered something to Ava. "Arrange the wedding for the day after tomorrow, and make sure Brooke Lynn receives an invitation." After all this fighting, in the end, Jason had still chosen her. Nothing else mattered. Jason, meanwhile, was reveling in the fact that Clara had been so agreeable. He completely missed the hushed exchange between the 2 women. With the new terms set, he followed Clara and her entourage out of the airport. Seeing his compliance, Clara was quite satisfied. "It's late. He must be hungry," she said softly to Ava as Jason got into the car, her eyes never leaving him. Her cold gaze was filled with a deep, possessive pleasure. "Have the chef prepare something. We'll have a nice drink tonight." "Yes, ma'am." Ava watched her boss's expression and could have sworn she saw pink hearts bubbling in Clara's eyes. She couldn't help but twitch a little. The foul stench of love. Author's note. Regarding the Miller family, the male lead is not being written as an idiot. This is a setup for a future plot point. Midtown General Hospital. "Son, look at the big sword Daddy made for you. Isn't it pretty?" "Son, say Daddy." "Say it." This kid, 4.5 and still can't talk. Robert Miller pranced around his son's hospital bed, holding a stick. Every so often, he would poke Leo Miller's oxygen tube with it. Leo lay on the bed, his eyes closed. His fingers twitched almost imperceptibly, as if protesting his delusional father. At the door to the room, a figure in a baseball cap watched, his eyes fixed on Leo. Damn it, that crazy old man is watching him like a hawk. How are we supposed to get a chance? The man had a knife scar on his face. He was 250, the same mercenary who had tried to ambush Clara in the woods. They had planned to take the money and run, but that idiot Victor Sterling had been so clueless that he'd sent them the final payment and hired them for another job. This time, the target was a man in a coma. The two brothers thought it would be an easy gig, but they hadn't counted on Robert Miller, who, in his madness, treated his son like a toddler and never left his side. Stumped, the two brothers then noticed the nurses' uniforms in the hospital. A few moments later, time to change her for. The two brothers, disguised as nurses, pushed a medical cart into the room. Under Robert's watchful eye, they took out a syringe and injected its contents into Leo's foreline. Then they left, accidentally dropping an item they had stolen from Jason's old apartment on the floor. A few minutes later, a blood-curdling scream erupted from the room. "Ah, my son! Son, what's wrong with you?" Leo was foaming at the mouth. A short while later, he was gone. Robert threw himself over his son's body, howling in grief. His eyes fell on the item on the floor, something that belonged to Jason. His eyes instantly turned bloodshot. It was that little bastard. It was his family. It was all their fault my son is dead. I knew it. I should have let him burn to death in that fire all those years ago. I'm going to kill him. Robert's eyes blazed with hatred. The hospital descended into chaos as staff rushed to the room. At the same time, Jason received the news. "You're saying Leo Miller is dead?" he asked, listening to Sprite's report. He raised an eyebrow, a hint of disappointment in his voice. "I wasn't done playing with him yet. How could he just die?" he muttered under his breath. "It looks like someone made a move. The two guys at the scene deliberately left behind one of your things. I bet Robert Miller hates your guts right now. He's definitely going to come after you for revenge. Should we make a move?" Sprite asked, scrolling through the surveillance footage. But Jason, as if he had thought of something, shook his head. "Not now. He still has a use. He was just wondering how he could escape from those two madwomen, Clara and Brooke. If Robert Miller could muster up the courage to make a move on him, faking his own death might not be a bad way out." The more Jason thought about it, the more excited he got. Sprite checked her phone again. "Oh, right. Bianca Sterling called you earlier. No idea why. And that professor of yours, Hannah-chun, she called too. Should I call them back?" "Bianca." Jason frowned. He could understand why Hannah would call, but why Bianca? He was sure he'd given her enough money yesterday. Send them both a text and ask what's up. Also, what's the situation with Brooklyn? Jason didn't sense anything amiss, and his thoughts turned to Brooke. He remembered her crash had been a bad one. "You're a busy man, aren't you?" Replying to this one, then that one. "And you even have to ask about her. Don't you care about me at all? I guess risking my life for you in that bathroom meant nothing." Oomph. Sprite, hearing him ask about everyone but her, started to pout. "If you want to know how Brooklyn is doing, go see her yourself. Don't ask me." Oomph. She stuck out her lip, sulking. Jason felt a headache coming on. "Of course I care about you. But we've known each other for years. Don't you know how much I care about you? They can't compare to you," he said, forcing himself to soothe her. He felt like a gigolo trying to placate his top two clients. These women were endless. "Fine. I'll forgive you for now. Let me see what I can find." Luckily, Sprite was easy to placate. With just a few words, she was satisfied and began hacking into Midtown General System. At the hospital, Mr. Lee and his men were waiting anxiously outside the emergency room. Brooke had been inside for a while, but there was another, unwelcome figure standing with them. "Mr. Lee, Miss Lynn is quite a passionate person, isn't she? I was just wondering, why exactly did she leave the auction halfway through and start street racing on the highway?" Julian Sue asked, a polite smile on his face, but his question was sharp. "Well," Mr. Lee was at a loss for words. "Mr. Sue, our missus, emotionally volatile. She does things like this from time to time. Right now, our main concern should be whether she's injured, don't you think?" Of course, he knew why Brooke had done it. It was because of that brat Jason. But he couldn't very well say that. Not when Julian Sue was the family's new choice of fiancé for Brooke. "Oh, is that so?" Julian adjusted his gold-rimmed glasses, a dark, imperceptible glint in his eyes. Even if this Mr. Lee wouldn't talk, he had done his research before coming to New York. It was all for some useless kid named Jason Miller. And his investigation had also revealed that this same kid was Clara Sterling's contractual husband. Julian's eyes turned cold. "Jason Miller. After all these years, they met again. A worthless, penniless boy from the past had somehow managed to become Clara Sterling's fiancée. Both Clara and Brooke had lost their composure today, even getting into a high-speed chase. All for this kid. It was a truly epic love story. If it weren't for the fact that Brooke Lynn was his family's choice for his future wife, he might have even laughed. The thought made him clench his fist until his knuckles cracked. This wasn't over. Sprite relayed the security footage to Jason. Julian Sue? What was he doing there? Jason frowned, confused. Just then, Clara's car pulled up to the gates of the Sterling estate. Get out. Clara was the first to exit the car, turning to look back at him. Jason stared at the sprawling estate, a bitter taste in his mouth. He'd gone to so much trouble to escape this place, only to end up right back where he started. But one look at Clara's threatening glare, and he knew he had no choice but to follow. I had some clothes brought for you. Go get cleaned up. We'll eat downstairs, Clara said as soon as he got out, signaling a guard who brought over a fresh set of clothes. Jason didn't argue. He took the clothes and headed for the bathroom. A short while later, when he returned, he noticed all the guards were standing outside the villa. He frowned, and as he looked up, he saw the dining room. A long table was set for two, lit by a pair of white candles. The soft, amber light filled the space, illuminating a bottle of red wine and two single roses, their petals scattered across the tablecloth. Two perfectly cooked steaks sat on plates, their aroma filling the air. It was an incredibly romantic scene. Clara, who must have showered and changed at some point, was already sitting at the table. She wore a dark red lace nightgown, her pale feet bare against the cold floor. Her beautiful eyes were heavy-lidded as she watched him. The entire room seemed to be saturated with her scent. Ahem. Jason couldn't help but clear his throat. Faced with such a seductive scene and the woman's stunning beauty, a faint blush crept up his neck. Miss Sterling, what is all this? He asked, instinctively taking a small step back. He made it clear all previous agreements were off. She wasn't going back on her word, was she? You're here, Clara said, as if just noticing him. She ignored his question. Sit down. Aren't you hungry? Have something to eat. You don't have to pretend in front of me. Well, Jason glanced at the steak and wine, hesitated for a moment, then sat down. Under Clara's watchful gaze, he picked up his knife and fork and took a bite. It was delicious. Seeing him eat, a satisfied expression finally appeared on Clara's face. She poured 2 glasses of wine and brought them over. Try it, she said, lifting her own glass. Her vibrant red lips took a delicate sip. Jason had no idea what she was planning, but as long as she wasn't in one of her rages, he was content. Besides, she had already drunk the wine, so it was probably safe. He took a sip. Thank you, Miss Sterling. At his words, Clara's gaze paused, and then a sudden smile broke across her face. You really managed to surprise me every time. He was thanking her. He sounded so docile. It seemed that loosening the leash a little had its benefits. He wasn't the same cornered animal, ready to lash out at the slightest touch. Seeing that her mood seemed to have improved, Jason started to relax. But her next words sent a jolt of alarm through him. You know, for the past few days, I suspected you might be Mr. G. I was almost convinced. But looking at you now, you're much tamer than he is. As she spoke, she reached out with a cool hand, her fingers gently tracing the line of his jaw. Gulp. Jason forced down the mouthful of steak, barely managing to hide the shock in his eyes. Damn it. How is her intuition so sharp? That was way too close. Clara didn't seem to notice his reaction. Victor Sterling is in custody. As of today, I have no parents. Then again, maybe I haven't for over a decade. A desolate smile touched her lips as she picked up her glass again. Here, have a drink with me. It's been a long time since my grandfather died. A long time since anyone just sat and talked with me like this. Jason, the smile on her lips suddenly seemed to shatter. She looked a little drunk, her beautiful eyes glistening, her cheeks flushed. The sight was enough to make anyone's heart ache. Her moist, red lips were impossible to look away from. They look very kissable. The thought popped into his head out of nowhere, and he immediately crushed it. Damn it, that's a dangerous thought. Am I insane? Jason, why are you blushing? Clara noticed his flushed face. Her cool fingers moved from his cheek to his earlobe, which was burning hot. You came back to the Sterling estate of your own free will this time. From now on, we're a real married couple. She murmured softly, You'll stay by my side? You won't run away again, right? She stared at him, cupping his face in her hands, as if desperate for an answer. Forced to meet her gaze, Jason looked at the woman before him. Of course, he hadn't come back willingly. But, drunk, with her eyes red, and looking like she might cry at any moment, She was a world away from the tyrant he knew. He frowned, looking at her beautiful face, and felt an unexpected pang of sympathy. Maybe she was ruthless in how she handled things. But just like him, she was an orphan no one wanted. She had personally orchestrated her own father's downfall, watching him wish for her death. How could she possibly be okay? Miss Sterling, you're drunk, Jason sighed. Suddenly, a warm, fragrant body pressed against him. The woman's stunning face filled his vision. Jason's pupils constricted just as she bit down on his lip. Don't call me Miss Sterling. Call me your wife, she demanded, her voice a strange mix of petulance and cold command, as if venting all her frustrations. Ow! The sharp pain made Jason push her away. Unsteady on her feet, Clara swayed and looked like she was about to collapse. Jason quickly stepped forward and caught her in his arms. Clara! Clara! He called her name twice, but got no response. She had fallen asleep. Her tolerance is that low. Jason's mouth twitched. He looked toward the guards outside. Ava, come get your boss and take her to her room. Ava, who had been peeking through the doorway, instantly pulled her head back. Sir, it's not that I don't want to, but Miss Sterling said if anyone interrupts your date, she'll break their legs. You're on your own. With that, she vanished. Hey, get back here. Jason was left standing there, fuming but helpless. He braced himself, awkwardly scooping Clara into his arms. Don't blame me when you wake up, he muttered, carrying her towards the bedroom. Your assistant made me do it. He never noticed the faint smile that curved the lips of the woman nestled in his arms. The familiar scent of incense filled the bedroom. Jason held Clara, her slender body curled against his chest. Even in her drunken sleep, she clung to his neck, refusing to let go. With no other choice, he carefully laid her down on the bed. Looking at her flawless, sleeping face, his feelings were a complicated mess. After a moment, he turned to leave, but she grabbed his hand. Jason froze. He thought she was awake, but a glance showed she was still sound asleep, just stubbornly holding on to him. Even in her sleep, she's afraid I'll run? How obsessed is she? He grimaced, but he was afraid that pulling his hand away would wake her. Besides, he'd had some wine himself and was feeling tired. He gave in and lay down beside her. As soon as his breathing evened out, the woman next to him opened her eyes. Clara's eyes were narrowed, completely devoid of the drunkenness from moments before. She watched the sleeping Jason for a while, making sure he was truly asleep. Only then did she prop herself up and lean over him. Looking at his peaceful face, she couldn't help but smile, reaching out to stroke his cheek. Feeling him here, truly by her side, a wave of deep satisfaction washed over her. After all these years in her position of power, her alcohol tolerance was far too high to be taken down by a few glasses of red wine. This little fool was still so naive. All it took was a few fake tears, and he felt sorry for her. He still had feelings for her. She had Brooklyn to thank for that. If Brooke hadn't told her that Jason had a thing for the green tea type, she never would have thought of faking vulnerability. Turns out, it worked like a charm. After all that running around, he was right back by her side. Anything Clara Sterling wanted, she got. It could never escape her grasp. Jason, you can only be mine. Staring at his face, she whispered softly before leaning down. A light, delicate kiss landed on his lips. Clara's face was flushed. Just one stolen kiss, and she pulled back quickly, her heart pounding her chest. The heat in her cheeks intensified. She thought it was Jason's heartbeat she was feeling, but when she placed a hand on her chest, she realized it was her own. Flustered, like a child caught sneaking a cookie, Clara quickly lay back down. It took a long moment for her heart to calm down. Finally, she turned on her side, looking at Jason with a contented smile. Asleep like this, he was actually quite cute. Meanwhile, outside the emergency room, the patient is out of immediate danger. The family can go handle the payment, a nurse announced, looking at Mr. Lee and Julian Sue. Wonderful. I'll go right now. Mr. Lee's face lit up with relief. He started to hurry off, then remembered something and turned back. Mr. Sue, could you please look after our young miss for a bit? She should be moved to a VIP room shortly. I'd appreciate it. As long as her life wasn't in danger, that was all that mattered. Now that she was vulnerable, she needed someone to care for her. As her future fiancé, Julian could be the first to show that concern. Maybe it would help build a connection. Maybe she wouldn't be so fixated on Jason Miller. With a sigh, Mr. Lee wanted to settle the bill. He could have sent a bodyguard, but he wanted to give the two young people some space. Besides, Jason was Claire's man now. He truly disapproved of his young Mrs. Disastrous entanglement. Of course, Mr. Lee. Don't worry, Julian said, who had the same idea. He followed the gurney into Brooke's room. Brooke had been moved to a private VIP room. She lay on the bed in a hospital gown, a bandage wrapped around her head, her beautiful face pale and drawn. Her eyes were closed, her lips colorless, moving as she murmured something in her sleep. Julian leaned closer to listen. His face instantly darkened. Jason. She was repeating Jason's name. An unidentifiable rage surged through Julian. He could practically feel the green tint of humiliation coloring his vision. Mr. Sue, Mr. Lee returned from paying the bill and saw the scene, feeling a wave of guilt. He started to offer an explanation. Julian's facial muscles twitched, but he quickly composed himself. Mr. Lee, it seems Brooke isn't doing too well yet. I'll let you take care of her. I have some business to attend to, so I'll be going. He was smiling, but it was incredibly stiff. The moment he turned away, his eyes were filled with a dark, menacing cloud. They're playing me for a fool, are they? Julian Sue, would not let this go. She was just a pawn in a business alliance. He didn't care about her. What he cared about was that some worthless insect like Jason Miller had gotten something he wanted. Inside the room, Mr. Lee watched Julian leave, frowning. He'd always heard that Julian Sue, the eldest son of the Sue family, was good-tempered. But this seemed a little too good-tempered. Even a bodyguard next to him was thinking, damn, the patience of a saint. Is he made of stone? As Mr. Lee stood there, conflicted, Brooke stirred on the bed. Jason. Her voice grew louder as she groggily opened her eyes. She found herself in a hospital room that smelled of disinfectant, a bandage on her head. There was no sign of Jason. Panic seized her. Jason. Where's Jason? Where is he? I have to find him. I have to find him, she cried, her face a mask of desperation. She shot up in bed, ripping the 4-needle from her hand. Mr. Lee rushed to stop her. Miss. Jason was taken away by Clara Sterling. Please stop this. What? Brooke froze, her beautiful eyes turning bloodshot. You're saying? Jason went back with Clara. She refused to believe it. That's impossible. He told me he was only with that old woman because he was being forced. Mr. Lee's voice was filled with a mixture of pity and exasperation. Miss, please stop being so delusional. What's so great about him? You turned down Mr. G, the match your family arranged for you, all for him. And today, Jason went back with Clara voluntarily. It was just a little spat between husband and wife. You're the only one who's been kept in the dark. Hoping to shock her out of her obsession, Mr. Lee chose to hide the fact that Jason had been cornered and forced back. He wanted his young miss to finally break free from this toxic relationship. But at his words, Brooke suddenly grabbed his arm. That's right. Mr. Lee, please, tell my family I agree to the marriage alliance with Mr. G. I agree, she said excitedly. Mr. Lee was stunned. Miss, just 2 days ago, you were completely against it. The family already canceled the arrangement with Mr. G. Just a few days ago, she had spoken of Mr. G with utter disgust. What had changed? Canceled? Who told you to cancel it? Brooke exploded. She was about to lash out when she remembered what she told Jason at the gala. She had almost signed a written promise. No wonder he said those things. He never wanted to marry me. But why? When he was pursuing her, he had seemed so sincere. She thought she was the only one for him. Why was he back with Clara Sterling now? Brooke's bloodshot eyes stared blankly, filled with confusion. Just then, a bodyguard entered the room. Miss, the Sterling family just released a statement. They're holding a wedding the day after tomorrow at Ocean View Gardens in the city center. It's for Miss Sterling and Jason Miller's wedding. Here's the invitation. The bodyguard's voice dwindled as Brooke's expression grew darker and darker. No, impossible. Brooke shot up, sweeping everything off the bedside table with a loud crash. Ignoring her injuries, she snatched the invitation from his hand. But when she saw the 2 names printed on it, all the strength drained from her body. Liar. Jason is a damn liar. Tears welled in her eyes. Her voice choked with anger and disbelief. She didn't want to believe it, but they were getting married. He had been lying to her all along, playing her for a fool. She felt like a clown, completely duped by him. The love letter he wrote to Hannah-chan, him pointing a gun at her, he really, truly wanted to be done with her. It felt like a string inside Brooke's mind finally snapped. She stared vacantly at the mess on the floor, her beautiful, vibrant face completely shattered. Jason, I'm going to kill him. In that moment, her reason was consumed by rage. Only one thought remained. She would absolutely not allow him to marry Clara Sterling. Not unless she was dead. The next morning, when Jason woke up, Clara was still asleep beside him. She seemed to be sleeping deeply, a faint smile on her lips. For a moment, she didn't seem so crazy. The atmosphere was peaceful, almost like an old married couple. Jason shook his head, quickly dismissing the thought. He carefully pulled his hand out from under her arm, got dressed, and went downstairs. After everything that had happened, he was familiar with the estate now and felt less constrained. He naturally fried an egg, made a simple sandwich for breakfast, and sat down at the table with his phone. While he ate and drank a glass of milk, he checked his messages from Bianca and Hannah-chan. Bianca was acting strange. After that one call, she hadn't answered any of his return calls or texts. A sliver of unease settled in his stomach. As for Hannah-chan, the thought of that love letter made him blush with embarrassment. Jason, are you staying over again tonight? Reading Hannah's hopeful message, Jason didn't know how to reply. Damn it, my high school crush found out about my crush on her, and I even confessed to finding her lingerie. He was seriously worried she thought he was some kind of pervert. But not only was she not angry, she was incredibly gentle with him, which made him feel even more ashamed and suspicious. She isn't angry after I did all that? I thought I'd get a slap for sure. Could it be that she also has feelings for? No way. Absolutely not. Jason's thoughts were getting out of hand. He mentally slapped himself. She was his teacher, for crying out loud. He didn't notice Clara, barefoot, silently appear a short distance behind him. She watched his strange antics, raising an eyebrow, but couldn't figure out what was wrong. She walked up to him. What are you eating? Her soft hand rested on his shoulder. Jason jumped, startled. He turned to see her cool, beautiful face. He swallowed hard. A sandwich. You want some? Sure, I'll have a little. He remembered Clara disliked simple, messy foods like this, so he was surprised when she agreed with interest. With no other choice, Jason reluctantly gave Clara the other half of his sandwich. Clara glanced down. Her half was slightly larger than his. A warmth spread through her chest. I didn't realize this kid was so thoughtful. He had clearly made it for her, but waited for her to ask. So stubborn. A smile played on Clara's lips. Jason just looked confused. What is she talking about? Was he supposed to eat the whole sandwich without cutting it? That was impractical. The egg and ham would fall out. What was she thinking now? Before he could figure it out, Clara had already snapped a photo of the sandwich. As Jason watched, baffled, she posted it to her social media. Hubby made me a sandwich. The kid is still so thoughtful. #wedding tomorrow, #Uriel invited. After typing out the caption, she took a satisfied bite. Jason, who wasn't friends with her online, had no idea what she was doing. He just found her behavior very strange. Was eating a sandwich making her lose her mind? Honey, get dressed later. We're going to pick out a wedding dress. Jason nearly choked on his milk. Pick out a wedding dress. What the hell? Weren't they already married? Why did they need another ceremony? Last time was just a small reception arranged by the family. This time, I booked Ocean View Gardens. My wedding, Clara Sterling's wedding, is going to be as grand as possible, she said, looking at his expression as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Then, she turned to instruct Ava. Oh, and don't forget to invite Professor Chun and Miss Lin. They should be there to offer their congratulations at my wedding. As she spoke, a look of triumphant satisfaction flashed in her eyes as she glanced at Jason. Her intuition was sharp. She had sensed something was off with Hannah's feelings for Jason at her apartment. While she didn't know what, if anything, was going on between them, she wanted everyone to know. Jason was hers alone. No one could take him from her. Not Hannah-chan, not Brooklyn. No matter what they tried, they couldn't steal him away. Hearing her words, Jason felt a pang of guilt. Inviting Hannah was one thing, but Brooklyn too? It was like she was actively trying to start a war. With Brooke's explosive temper, he seriously wondered if she'd drive a car straight into the wedding ceremony and try to kill them both. What, you don't want to? Clara asked, her eyes growing colder. Jason could only manage a strained laugh. Of course not. I'd love to. Could he say no? Could he run? Did this woman ever give him a choice? As long as you're willing. I would never force you, Clara said with a placid smile, the words sounding utterly hollow. Yeah, right, Jason thought. Like I'd ever believe that. Okay then, we'll go pick out a dress after we finish eating, he said aloud, resigning himself to his fate. It was just picking out a dress. No big deal. Meanwhile, in a secure room somewhere in New York. Is she stable? Two men in black, with the numbers 33 and 34 tattooed on their wrists, stood by a simple metal frame bed, looking at the monitors displaying Bianca Sterling's vitals. Bianca's small face was a cold, emotionless mask. None of your business, she said, her voice distant despite the four in her arm. 33 and 34 exchanged a look, unsurprised by her reaction. Since you've recovered, we won't escort you. Make your own way back to the Sterling residence. The Sterling family is now completely under Clara's control. It's time you drop the act and behave yourself. As they spoke, one of them pulled the 4 from Bianca's arm and clipped a bracelet onto her wrist with a detached, professional air. This will monitor your vitals. Headquarters ordered it to prevent you from causing any more impulsive disturbances. You'd be wise to stay out of trouble. With that, they turned to leave. Oh, by the way, one of them said, pausing at the door. News from the Sterlings. Clara has decided to hold another wedding ceremony with Jason tomorrow. You are expected to attend. Don't do anything reckless. If headquarters has to issue a punishment, we won't be able to help you. They left, closing the door behind them. Bianca remained frozen. What? What did they just say? Aunt Clara is having a wedding with my brother tomorrow? They're really getting married. Bianca's previously steady heart rate spiked violently on the monitor. No, they can't, brother, she whispered, her eyes turning red. Her knuckles went white as she gripped her phone. It still showed the last messages he'd sent her. She had thought that after he left the Sterling estate, after he dropped her off at the hotel, he wouldn't go back. But he did. Why? Why? Bianca's chest heaved. She had to find out. If her brother really married her aunt, it would be over between them. There'd be no more chances. Brother can't marry Aunt Clara. She absolutely could not let this wedding happen. But headquarters had forbidden her from acting. What could she do? Bianca bit her lip, and a name came to mind. Brooke Lynn. That's it. Brooke was obsessed with her brother. She couldn't make a move herself, but she could use Brooke Lynn. There was no way Brooke would just stand by and watch her brother marry Clara. The more Bianca thought about it, the more excited she became. She immediately called Jason. Hello. He answered within seconds. Brother, she began, her voice tentative. As she spoke, she opened her laptop. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, and a map appeared on screen, pinpointing her brother's phone location. Without a second thought, Bianca sent the location to Brooke Lynn. They didn't have each other's contact information, but for a genius hacker like her, that was a trivial obstacle. Bianca, why did you leave the hotel? Jason's voice was low. He was in a car with Clara. Brother, where are you? Bianca asked, ignoring his question, her large eyes red with unshed tears. I'm out getting a bite to eat. Jason hesitated. He didn't want to tell her about him and Clara, but she already knew. I heard at school. You and Clara are getting married? Brother, are you still going to lie to me? Bianca, I'll explain everything later, okay? For now, just get some rest. Call me if you need anything. Jason's voice was gentle, trying to soothe her. He didn't have a choice in being with Clara. But Bianca wasn't part of New York's high society, and he didn't want her getting dragged into it. It was too dangerous. If Clara targeted Bianca because of him, it would be even worse. After a few more placating words, Jason hung up. Bianca stared at the final location on her computer screen, her eyes completely bloodshot. White Rose Bridal. She whispered, the name a bitter taste on her lips. She gripped her phone so tightly that blood began to seep through the bandages on her hand, reopening her wounds. She didn't seem to notice. Biting down hard on her lip, she whispered, Brother, don't blame me. I can't just watch you be with Aunt Clara. She sent another message to Brooke Lynn. Address, White Rose Bridal. Jason and Clara are inside picking out wedding dresses. If you don't want Jason to marry her, you should go soon. The message arrived almost instantly. Brooke was lying in her hospital bed, staring blankly ahead, surrounded by a dozen bodyguards. Some held trays of fruit, others desserts, and a strawberry milkshake. Mr. Lee sat beside her, coaxing, Miss, you haven't eaten in a day and a night. Please, just have one bite. He was filled with regret. He thought telling her about the wedding would sever her obsession with Jason. Instead, she had started screaming about killing the cheating couple. He obviously couldn't let her leave. In protest, Brooke had started a hunger strike. He'd sent out for the best blueberry pie in the city. A bodyguard brought it to her. The moment Brooke saw it, she reacted like a feral cat. Get out. All of you get out. And don't ever let me see that thing again, she shrieked, knocking the pie to the floor. The terrified bodyguard scrambled back. Mr. Lee's face darkened. If she doesn't want it, take it away. Even if she starved herself, he couldn't let her out of here now. She would absolutely go cause a scene at the wedding. After tomorrow, once Jason and Clara were married, it would be a done deal. When he finally let her go, she wouldn't be able to cause much trouble. You all keep a close eye on her. She is not to leave this room for the next 2 days, Mr. Lee instructed the dozen bodyguards before turning to leave. The moment he stepped out of the room, a notification from an unknown number popped up on Brooke's phone. She glanced at it, frowning. The source was anonymous, but the message was a location, a bridal shop. When she read the text that followed, her eyes instantly turned red. You're saying Jason and Clara went to pick out wedding dresses? Impossible. They had just sent the invitation. And now they were already off playing happy couple, shopping for dresses? Even though Brooke knew Jason had deceived her, she couldn't accept that he truly didn't like her anymore. The anonymous texter replied, "Believe it or not. Bottom line, if you don't want them to get married, you'd better do something about it. I've sent you the location." The person on the other end didn't seem to care about her reaction, simply pushing her to take action. Brooke glanced at the dozen bodyguards surrounding her, a flash of hatred in her eyes. "You think I don't want to go? If it weren't for these idiots blocking my way, I'd have already killed that cheating couple," she hissed through clenched teeth. The next message made her freeze for a second. "I'll take care of the Lynn family's people, but I can only buy you a few minutes. Whether you succeed is up to you." Bianca narrowed her eyes, smirking. She knew Brooke's temper wouldn't let her sit still. She must have been trapped by her family. That was easy enough to fix. With that thought, Bianca made a call. A few moments later, to Brooke's surprise, several people from the Sterling family arrived outside her hospital room. "Is Mr. Lee here? We heard Miss Lynn had an accident and came to pay our respects." The Sterling family's voices carried into the room. A few of Brooke's bodyguards went out to meet them, seeing no reason for suspicion. After all, the Sterlings were a prominent family in the city and had no apparent connection to Jason. While they were busy with the visitors, a few guards remained by Brooke's side. Just as she was debating whether to make a run for it, a sudden commotion erupted outside, and the remaining guards moved cautiously to the doorway to investigate. At that exact moment, a figure appeared at the window. A few seconds later, Brooke was standing on the ground below the hospital, looking up at the ladder leaning against her window and the unconscious guards inside. A bitter smile twisted her lips. "Bianca Sterling, you really went all out, didn't you?" she muttered, looking at the unknown number on her phone. No matter how foolish she was, she could piece it together now. The Sterling family had come to help, and Bianca happened to share their name. To get into A-list university, her family had to be powerful. She just hadn't expected Bianca to be the long-lost Sterling heiress. "You're not as dumb as you look," Bianca texted back, not bothering to hide it anymore. Brooke couldn't help but ask, "You want me to stop Jason's wedding, so why don't you do it yourself?" "I never said that," Bianca replied coolly before ending the chat. She wasn't worried if Brooke would go or not. She knew with a personality like hers, she wouldn't be able to resist. Sure enough, Brooke stared at the blocked contact, then threw her phone to the ground with a smash. "Bianca Sterling, you want me to stop Jason's wedding for you?" "Dream on," she screamed. A Sterling family assistant nervously wheeled a motorcycle over. "Miss Lynn, this bike, are you still taking it? Or should I escort you back to your room?" "Get lost," Brooke roared again. The assistant was about to flee when Brooke grabbed him by the collar. "Get back here. Who said I wasn't going? I'm going to tear that cheating couple to pieces. I am absolutely not going to stop Jason's wedding." "Jason who? Who cared about some stupid man? She didn't want him. She was just angry about being lied to. That was all. But the moment she saw him, her tune would change completely. "Miss Sir, we've arrived at the bridal shop." Ava opened the car door with a wide smile, looking at Jason and Clara sitting side by side. She looked like she was witnessing her favorite ship become canon. After all this drama, her boss and her man were finally making it official. The thought of them taking wedding photos was thrilling. Clara and Jason looked up at the same time. White Rose Bridal was the largest bridal shop in New York City. The storefront was luxurious and elegant, with a stunning array of pristine, magnificent white gowns in the display windows. Each dress was valuable enough to buy a studio apartment in the West Village. But for that price, the craftsmanship and design of each one were unique and breathtakingly beautiful. Clara gave them a cursory glance and smiled. "Not bad. Honey, let's go pick one out," she said, turning to Jason. She was pleased with the selection here, a warm feeling spreading through her chest, tinged with anticipation. The dresses were beautiful just hanging on the mannequins. They would look even better on her. Most importantly, she was really getting married to Jason, and she would wear a wedding dress for him, even though he was 3 years younger than her. Seemed so endearingly naive and was always trying to escape. At this moment, Clara felt an indescribable sense of fulfillment. Even the bad mood from his earlier phone call with a stranger evaporated. She was sure that when Jason saw her in a wedding dress, he would love it. He would willingly marry her. Growing more excited by the second, Clara took Jason's arm and walked into the shop. Jason, however, felt a strange sense of unreality. Was he really here, picking out a wedding dress with Clara? But it was supposed to be a contractual marriage. Why was it all so grand? He felt a little uncomfortable with it all. But seeing the look of pure joy on Clara's face as she entered the shop, he swallowed his words. "Oh, you two look so sweet. You must be newlyweds. Here, get to choose a dress. We just got our latest collection in. Would you like to try some on?" A sales associate immediately greeted them with effusive warmth. Jason's mouth twitched. This woman was a pro. She could see the Grand Canyon of emotional distance between him and Clara and still say something like that. Impressive. Clara, however, lapped it up. Yes, bring out every dress in the store. If I like them after trying them on, I'll buy them all. All of them. Are you planning a bridal fashion show? Jason was stunned. This woman's spending was on another level. Leave it to the richest family in New York. At his question, Clara's expression soured. What? Honey, are you unwilling to buy them for me? She asked, her cold eyes narrowed on him. It felt like if he shook his head, his life would be in immediate danger. Jason forced a dry laugh. Of course. Buy as many as you want. Everything today is on me, honey. He made a grand, sweeping gesture, though inside his heart was bleeding. What loss? A catastrophic loss. Maybe after she wears them, I can sell them on eBay, might get some of the money back. And that designer suit Brooke tore up. If it wasn't for that sapphire bracelet, I'd be completely broke right now. Clara didn't notice his internal turmoil. Hearing his words, her eyes curved into a smile. Thank you, honey. She leaned in and gave him a quick peck on the cheek before turning to browse the dresses. The unexpected kiss left Jason momentarily stunned. The sales associate beamed. Miss, your husband may look young, but he treats you so well. They say older men know how to spoil a woman, but it looks like the younger ones are just as good. Aren't they? You are so lucky. And he's lucky, too, to have such a beautiful girlfriend. The flattery made Clara's smile deepen. Even Jason, who usually scoffed at such empty praise, felt a little puffed up. What you said, for the person I love, I'd spend any amount of money. It has nothing to do with age. Like Vivian, all those years ago, no matter how broke he was, he would have spent all his money to buy her a beautiful white dress. He would have worked odd jobs for weeks, doing the dirtiest, hardest labor, just to buy her a comfortable pair of shoes because she said her feet hurt. He was never stingy with the people he cared about. He was just frugal by nature. Hearing this, Clara's face flushed. He'd spend money on the person he loves. Does that mean he loves me? Clara bit her lip, feeling a little embarrassed by the thought. She cleared her throat. Ahem, saying things like that in broad daylight. I'm going to go change. She hastily grabbed a dress and practically fled into the fitting room. Jason was left standing there, completely bewildered. Things like what? What did I say? Doesn't she say things a million times more outrageous than that on a daily basis? He shrugged it off and started sipping on the complimentary beverage the shop provided while he waited for Clara to emerge. After a couple of sips, he looked at the empty glass and felt a pang of pity for himself. Where else in the world could you find a man as thrifty as him, drinking free water while buying his wife multi-million-dollar wedding dresses? He steeled himself and bought a $3 can of Coke from a nearby machine. Why does a can of Coke cost $3? Why did the price go up? My poor wallet. Sipping his expensive soda, he waited by the fitting room door until Clara finally pushed it open. The sight of her took his breath away. She was wearing a pure white gown that hugged her exquisite figure. Her skin, revealed by the dress, was like flawless jade. On her beautiful, small face, her usually cool eyes were softened by a touch of shy girlishness. Her glossy black hair was partially swept up, lending her an air of gentle elegance. In that moment, she wasn't the fearsome, decisive Clara Sterling that New York City feared. She was his gentle bride. Her icy shell melted away. Jason's gaze faltered. Staring at her, he felt a moment of disorientation. Were he and Clara really getting married? But in that instant, an image of Vivian flashed through his mind. For years, he had tried so hard to forget. But how could he so easily erase the memories of the girl he had leaned on in the orphanage since he was 5, surviving hardship by giving each other warmth? It was one of the reasons he never wanted to get married. He couldn't irresponsibly marry one girl while another still lived in his heart. Is it beautiful? Clara's voice, soft and hesitant, pulled him back to the present. It's beautiful, Jason answered honestly, almost by reflex. He couldn't bring himself to lie to a woman about that. Clara in a wedding dress was truly stunning. Her cool, exquisite features were already a work of art, but in the gown, she was so beautiful it made his own cheeks flush. She looked like she had stepped out of a painting, but his feelings were a complicated mess. This was it. He was getting married. I'm glad you like it. There are a few more. I'll change so you can help me decide. Clara smiled, pleased with his response, and picked out several more gowns. She was completely lost in the joy of her impending marriage to Jason. She had dreamed of this moment so many times, and now that it was here, she couldn't help but feel a thrill of excitement. After trying on more than a dozen dresses, she finally chose a white, strapless mermaid gown adorned with platinum-colored diamonds. It was exquisite and magnificent, accentuating her graceful figure perfectly. The sales associate also pulled Jason aside and had him change into a suit. Soon, they were standing in front of camera. "Sir, miss, this dress comes with a complimentary honeymoon package and an on-location photo shoot. But if that's not convenient for you right now, we could take a few portraits for you to use, as well as a red background shot for the announcement." "Would that work?" the associate explained. Normally, they would do the photo shoot before the registration and wedding banquet. But Clara had demanded photos for tomorrow's ceremony, including the formal red background portrait. It was rushed, but it was the only way. "That's fine," Clara agreed, a blush on her cheeks. Jason didn't object. After a few quick portraits in their wedding attire, they changed into matching white button-down shirts for the formal red background shot. They had no idea that just outside the shop, Brooklyn's motorcycle had just pulled up to the curb. "Miss, are you here for a bridal appointment?" A sales associate hurried to greet Brooke as she stormed into the shop. "Where are Jason and Clara?" Brooke asked, her voice like ice. The associate looked confused. "Miss, if you're looking for someone, perhaps you should call your friends. I don't know who they are, and we're not permitted to disclose customer information." Before she could finish, a credit card hit her in the face. "I'm buying every single dress in this store today. Now, can you get lost?" She'd see about that. If she bought every dress in the store, that old woman Clara wouldn't be able to buy a thing. She would make sure this entire chain of stores went out of business for wasting her time. With that, Brooke stormed deeper into the shop. The next second, she saw something that made her blood run cold. Jason and Clara, dressed in matching white shirts, were nestled closely together in front of the camera. Brooke's eyes instantly turned crimson. Her fists clenched so tight her knuckles cracked. She wanted nothing more than to rush over and tear them both apart. To make matters worse, the photographer was gushing. "Bride and groom, a little closer. Oh, you two are so in love. It's making everyone jealous. Smile. A big smile from both of you," the crew called out. Looking at the handsome couple, they knew they were being paid to flatter, but some of it was genuine. They really did look perfect together. Brooke, however, felt her teeth grinding. "Jason," she whispered, her eyes bloodshot. She was still in her hospital gown, a bandage wrapped around her head, looking utterly unhinged. Even the sales associate, clutching the credit card, backed away slowly. What was going on? Did a mental patient just wander into their store? Meanwhile, Clara and Jason hadn't yet seen Brooke. Hearing the photographer's instructions, they both blushed slightly, but wanted to get the photos over with. Jason took the initiative. He reached out, took Clara's small hand, leaned his head closer to hers, and smiled. Clara was startled by the sudden contact. A blush immediately spread across her cheeks. This was the first time Jason had ever willingly taken her hand. Did this mean he had finally accepted her, that he wouldn't try to run away anymore? It had to be. A flicker of joy lit up in Clara's eyes. Feeling the warmth of his hand holding hers, she couldn't resist gently stroking the back of his hand with her thumb, casting a sultry glance his way. Jason felt a strange sensation on his hand. Startled, he glanced at Clara from the corner of his eye. He tried to pull his hand back, but her grip was like steel. Damn it, weren't we supposed to be keeping this professional? What's with the hand touching? Okay, so he touched her first, but that was for the photo. Her little movements were so full of blatant flirtation, it was making his heart race. She was definitely doing it on purpose. But the photographer was ecstatic. "Yes, just like that. That's the look. Don't be shy, you two. Love is meant to be expressed," he exclaimed, looking at them like they were a bashful young couple. Jason's face darkened, but since he was the one who started it, he gritted his teeth and endured it to avoid being a hypocrite. The photographer started snapping away furiously. Watching all this from the entrance, Brooke felt like she was going to shatter her own teeth. That bastard. That old hag. Holding hands. Fine. You love holding hands so much. I'll give you something to hold on to today. Seething with rage, her beautiful face flushed, Brooke's eyes landed on a lighter on the counter. A crazed look flashed in her eyes. A moment later, to the associate's astonishment, Brooke returned with a can of gasoline. Because she was out shopping for dresses, and because Jason had come back with her willingly, and with Victor Sterling in custody, Clara had let her guard down. Normally, there would have been bodyguards posted outside. But even her personal security detail, after sitting around for so long, wanted to witness their boss's happy moment, so they were all inside a separate room. This gave Brooke the perfect opportunity. She unscrewed the cap and began dousing the entire showroom in gasoline. "Miss, oh my God, what are you doing? Someone call the police. Call the police and get this psycho," the sales associate shrieked, fumbling for her phone. Brooke shot her a death glare. "If you don't want to die, shut your mouth and get out. I'm only here to kill Clara and Jason." The rest of you scram. Her eyes were webbed with red veins, her chest heaving violently. She was clearly in the middle of a psychotic episode. The associate looked at Brooke's crazed expression and violent eyes and chose to flee. She was just a salesgirl. She wasn't about to die for her boss's bridal shop. Psycho or not, who would dare argue with her? Jason, you love lying, don't you? Let's see you lie your way out of this. After the associate was gone, Brooke turned her bloodshot eyes back to Clara and Jason in the photo studio. She flicked the lighter and tossed it into the puddle of gasoline. Instantly, the entire showroom was engulfed in flames. Brooke stared at the blaze, a manic smile spreading across her face. You love wedding dresses? You love taking wedding photos and getting married? I burned down the whole damn store. Let's see you take your pictures now. What's that smell? Something's burning. Inside the photo studio, Ava was the first to notice. She sniffed the air, but couldn't place it. Jason and Clara looked around too. A burning smell? I smell barbecue, Jason said after a few sniffs. Barbecue? You guys have a grill here? Ava asked, surprised. And it smells fresh. The group was still trying to figure it out when one of the bodyguards let out a piercing scream. Holy, my ass. My ass is on fire. The guard, who had been helping search, turned his head and saw that his pants were literally on fire. He'd been so engrossed in watching his boss and her man that he hadn't even felt the heat. Everyone stared in shock. Behind the guard, countless wedding dresses were ablaze. Thick smoke billowed into the room, and the temperature was rising fast. The fire had reached them. Ava's eyes went wide. Quick, protect Miss Sterling, she yelled, snapping back to reality. The bodyguards immediately formed a human shield around Clara. Someone is trying to hurt her. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have been so distracted. Ava's shout threw the room into chaos as the bodyguards, highly trained, began to evacuate Clara with swift efficiency. Clara, hindered by her elaborate dress, narrowed her eyes. She reached out to grab Jason. But another hand got there first, snatching him away. Before Jason could even cry out, he was staring into a pair of blood-red eyes. A hand yanked him into the inferno. Brooke Lynn. Once he was in the heart of the fire, Jason finally recognized her. It was Brooke, still in her hospital gown, her expression bordering on insane. Jason, so you do remember me. I was starting to think you'd forgotten all about me, that your head was filled with nothing but that old woman. Brooke, with a strength he didn't know she possessed, slammed him against a glass display case. Pain shot through his back. The entire bridal shop was now a roaring blaze. Ava and the others had already gotten Clara out, completely forgetting about him. He and Brooke were trapped, surrounded by fire. But what terrified him more was the look of absolute finality in her eyes. Brooke, are you crazy? What the hell are you doing? Did you start this fire? Seeing the complete lack of fear on her face, he knew. This woman was planning to burn him alive. Arson, attempted murder with a car. It wouldn't be the first time for this psycho. Brooke saw the panic on his face and a slow, cruel, Brooke, you're insane. The heat was becoming unbearable. Jason had no desire to get tangled up with this madwoman and turned to run. But Brooke grabbed him, her grip unyielding. You're not leaving. Jason, are you trying to go back to that old woman? I won't let you. That old woman? Brooke, what do you want? If we don't leave, we're both going to die in here. Besides, didn't you say you didn't like me? Since you don't, could you please stop harassing me? Jason spat, his voice laced with fury. Behind them, a burning mannequin collapsed with a heavy thud. He was convinced she was trying to kill him out of pure spite. But Brooke's next words stopped him in his tracks. Jason, do you really have to force me to say it before you'll come back to me? Her eyes were bloodshot, and she seemed oblivious to the flames raging behind her. At that moment, the words she had suppressed for so long finally came tumbling out. Fine, I admit it. I like you. Jason, I like you. Can you please stop fighting with me? Can we just go home? Her proud head for the first time was bowed. She realized that when she heard he was marrying Clara, a genuine fear had gripped her heart. She was afraid he would never again be the boy who made her blueberry pies every day and tried to make her happy. She was afraid that if she didn't say it now, she would never get another chance. Only then did she finally understand that this boy, who she thought meant nothing, had carved out a permanent place in her heart. Jason froze. She said, she liked him. How was that possible? He had pursued her precisely because she had sworn she would never fall for him. He had used her abrasive personality as a tool to tarnish the perfect image of Vivian in his mind. But now, the same Brooke Lynn who had sworn she'd never fall for a simp like him was telling him she liked him. Miss Lynn, I know you're just trying to keep your toy around, but toy. His attempt to explain only enraged her more. Jason, I said I like you. I'm confessing my feelings to you. And you still don't believe me? No, I don't. Jason said honestly. It wasn't his fault. Her past behavior hardly inspired trust. You. Brooke's face flushed a dark red. Then what will it take for you to believe me? Just say the word. I'll give you anything you want. Money, power me. Or do you like wedding dresses? I'll wear one for you, she said, grabbing his hand and pressing it to her cheek. In the fiery haze, her tear-filled eyes met his, her long lashes wet. For a moment, it felt as if the world outside the inferno had gone silent, leaving just the two of them. Jason felt the softness of her skin and instantly yanked his hand back. Brooke, what are you doing? This psycho. She wants to do that in a place like this? The whole building is about to collapse. But for the first time, he started to believe her. I'm sorry, Miss Lynn. I think you've misunderstood. I haven't had feelings for you since we broke up. You're a good person, but we're not right for each other. Jason pulled his hand free, delivering the classic rejection. He turned to leave. Behind him, Brooke stood stunned, her eyes slowly filling with red. She'd been rejected. For the first time in her life, Brooke Lynn had confessed her feelings, and she had been rejected. Then we'll die here together. A crazed look entered her eyes. She pulled out a pistol and aimed it at Jason. Oh, for F, Jason swore. Terrified she was about to snap completely, he bolted for the exit. But as he glanced back, he saw an expression of profound hurt on her face. Jason, you really don't like me anymore. She whispered, biting her lip. She was just trying to scare him. When had she ever truly hurt him? But he believed she would. Brooke's heart plummeted. A massive, burning section of the ceiling came crashing down. She just stood there, staring, as if in a trance, making no move to get out of the way. Brooke! Jason's eyes widened in horror. He lunged forward, wrapped an arm around her waist, and threw them both clear of the falling debris. It crashed to the ground behind them. Brooke looked up at him, her beautiful eyes filled with a dazed confusion. He said he didn't like her anymore, so why did he save her? Before she could process it, Jason's cold voice cut through her thoughts. Miss Lynn, I was wrong to pursue you. He had used her as a substitute for Vivian, never imagining she would develop real feelings. Brooke was still stunned, lost in the moment he had risked his life for her. This is the last time I will ever help you. From now on, everything between us is over. Erased. Forget everything that happened. I'm marrying Clara at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. You can't compete with her. It will be best if you don't show up. His words were cold and final. He took off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders, then turned and walked toward Clara's car, which was waiting nearby. He thought he had made himself perfectly clear. Behind him, Brooke's eyes slowly cleared. Jason, you're lying, she whispered. She didn't believe him. If he really didn't like her anymore, would he have risked his life to save her? He said she couldn't compete with Clara. Was it because he was afraid she would get hurt if she tried? Staring at Jason's retreating back, then down at the jacket he'd left her, Brooke became more and more convinced of her theory. He had chased her for a year, but had only known Clara for a month. How could he possibly love Clara? Of course. Why didn't I think of it before? He was trying to protect her. He was worried about her. He said 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Was he hinting that she should come and crash the wedding at 10? If Jason, walking toward Clara, could have heard her thoughts, he probably would have jumped out of his skin. Are you kidding me? Where do you even come up with this stuff? After being rushed out by Ava and the others, Clara had coldly berated them. Seeing that Jason hadn't emerged from the flames, she had been on the verge of running back in herself. But just then he appeared behind her. Miss Sterling, why did you run so fast? Jason panted, pretending he had just managed to escape. Clara looked surprised, but her gaze went past him to Brooke Lynn, who was now walking out of the smoldering wreckage. Jason, I heard what you said, and I won't forget it. Brooke called out, looking disheveled but smiling brightly. Her eyes, when they met Clara's, were full of defiance. Her tone was so suggestive it was as if she and Jason had just shared a scandalous secret. Just then, Ava came over, holding a phone with the security footage. Miss, we checked. Brooke Lynn started the fire. At her words, Clara's face visibly darkened. It was obvious. After she had been evacuated, Jason and Brooke had stayed behind and had some kind of private conversation, and he was trying to lie to her about it. Wait, Brooke, get back here and explain yourself. Jason saw the dangerous look in Clara's eyes and panicked. But Brooke ignored him, put on her helmet, and sped away on her motorcycle, leaving Jason and the others to face Clara's icy wrath. So, I know this sounds crazy, but we just ran into each other by chance. You believe me, right? Jason said, clearing his throat, though even he didn't by his own excuse. Do you take me for an idiot? Clara sneered. Just as Jason braced for an explosion, A look of weary disappointment flickered in her eyes. "Take him home and get him cleaned up," she said, her voice flat, echoing the same words she had used once before. Clara didn't lose her temper. Jason should have been relieved, but for some reason, he felt a strange unease. That was it. It was over. Evening in New York, but morning on the other side of the world. In a European-style villa nestled in the Swiss Alps. Mademoiselle plays more beautifully every day. She just won the national dance competition last month, and now her piano skills are nearly perfected. A piano teacher stood talking with a richly dressed, elegant woman. They were in a vast living room, the sound of a graceful melody filling the air as they watched a young woman in a white dress at the grand piano, her fingers dancing effortlessly across the keys. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a golden halo around the girl. As the music swelled, even the servants in the room paused, captivated. The elegant woman's expression, however, remained cold. A jarring voice broke the serene atmosphere. "Mother, is sister practicing piano again? So diligent. If I didn't know she was still obsessed with that poor kid from the countryside, I might actually think she was noble." Julian Sue walked in, smelling of alcohol. He took off his glasses, his face a mask of contempt. The girl's music faltered. She clenched her fists, then resumed playing. The elegant woman, Madame Sue, frowned and gestured for the servants and teacher to leave. Once they were alone, she spoke. "Julian, you need to show some restraint, even at home. If word of this got out, the reputation you've so carefully built all these years would be ruined." Julian scoffed at his mother's advice. He had just returned from a humiliating encounter with Brooklyn in New York and had flown back overnight for business. He was still seething with resentment towards Jason Miller and was taking it out on the girl before him. "Stop playing," he sneered. "Vivian, do you really think of Grand Miss Sue? You're nothing but a tool." His expression darkened as he suddenly slammed the piano lid shut. The girl instinctively snatched her hand back just in time. The heavy lid would have crushed her fingers. Vivian finally looked up. "Julian, what do you want?" Her face was gentle and exquisitely beautiful, with unadorned almond eyes, pale pink lips, and skin like jade. Her long black hair flowed over the white dress. A gentle breeze carried the faint scent of daisies. She was like moonlight, so pure and ethereal it was hard to look away, yet too sacred to touch. On closer inspection, she bore a striking resemblance to Brooklyn without makeup. But now, her face was cold, adding to her aloofness. Her icy glare seemed to sting Julian. "What do I want?" You're not qualified to ask," he snarled. Vivian's fists tightened, and her eyes grew colder. "Is that so? In that case, I wouldn't mind making a call to Father. I'm sure he doesn't know you're back yet, does he?" A clear threat laced her words. Years ago, when she was adopted by the Sue family, she knew she was walking into a viper's nest. Over the years, she had meticulously gathered evidence of their countless crimes. While it might not be enough to destroy the family, it was enough to cripple them. It was the only reason her adoptive father offered her any protection. Otherwise, Julian and his mother would have torn her apart long ago. As expected, the mention of his father made Julian flinch. His mother quickly intervened. "Julian, dear, your sister is practicing. Don't disturb her. I made you soup. Come and have some." "And Vivian," she added, turning to the girl, "it's almost time for your next blood draw. Make sure you don't miss it." She then pulled Julian toward the kitchen. Vivian sat at the piano. As she listened, a cold glint flashed in her eyes. "Don't worry, I remember," she replied, her voice cool, glancing at the faint needle marks on her arm from years of forced donations. When she looked up again, her gaze toward Julian and his mother was filled with killing intent. "Go on, drink up. Have plenty." Their lives were running out. They only had a year left, just a little longer. She just had to endure a little longer, and she would never have to see their faces again. "Jason." Vivian's eyes softened as she whispered his name, her fingers gently stroking a crudely made ring on her finger. He had put on her that summer, all those years ago. It was made of the cheapest material, not even silver, but it was the only thing she treasured. Everything else in the Sue family was tainted and grotesque. Only this ring remained, never once taken off in all these years. She could still remember the earnest, clean-cut boy from her youth, his eyes full of devotion as he slid the ring onto her finger. "Just wait for me a little longer. Soon, they can all go to hell." Stroking the rough ring, a flicker of light finally returned to her dull eyes. She had endured for years for this moment. Finally, she could finally see him again. The Sterling Estate, New York. Night. The atmosphere at the dinner table was ice cold. Jason ate in silence, and so did Clara. Since they had returned home, She hadn't even looked at him. It made him wonder if she'd been replaced by a body double. He didn't notice the growing disappointment in her eyes. She had thought that taking wedding photos, him calling her his wife, meant that his heart was finally hers. A wedding dress was a sacred thing. He had just been telling her how beautiful she looked one minute, and the next he was tangled up with Brooklyn again. She wanted to explode, but she found she couldn't understand him anymore. She was starting to doubt her judgment, so she gave him the silent treatment, waiting to see if he would back down. To her astonishment, the clueless idiot actually thought she wasn't angry. This only made her angrier. Ava, standing to the side, watched the stalemate and finally nudged Jason. "Sir, you have to say something." "Huh? Say what?" Jason whispered back, completely lost. Clara saw this exchange and almost erupted. "I'm full," she finally said, stabbing her steak knife into the meat. She turned and stalked out of the room. Jason stared after her. Clara had always been so aggressive that he'd stopped thinking of her as a normal woman. But now, is she angry? It actually seemed like she was pouting, waiting for him to go and comfort her. Jason frowned. Ava looked at him with an expression of pure exasperation. "You're just figuring that out now? Sir, if you don't want to suffer, I suggest you go and make it up to her." "Me? Make it up to her? She's your wife. If you don't do it, who will?" Ava retorted, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Well, she had a point. If some other guy did it, that wouldn't be good. But how do I do that? He had experience placating Brooke, but who knew if the same tactics would work on Clara? Ava blushed slightly. Actually, Miss Sterling is pretty easy to please. You know how women are. The worst thing you can do is give her space to think. If she thinks too much, you're guaranteed to get dumped. When she's angry, you just have to kiss her, hold her hand, hug her, and then, let things happen naturally." Stop. What are you talking about?" Jason looked at her, shocked. Was this assistant giving him appropriate advice? Kissing and hand-holding were one thing, but what came next? "Fine. If you don't want to learn, then I never taught you," Ava said, getting huffy and turning to leave. Jason quickly grabbed her arm. "Hey, wait. I never said I wasn't listening. Does that stuff really work?" The other things were questionable, but hand-holding, he could probably manage that. After all, he and Brooke were over, and Clara was technically his wife. As long as she didn't pull out the whip, a little affection wasn't out of the question. The main fear was the whip. He wasn't a spinning top. Getting whipped every day was humiliating. Of course it works, but you have to do it my way. First, order some flowers to show your sincerity. Then, make a little dessert. Ava's mood brightened instantly as she started giving orders. "Flowers?" Jason frowned. Flowers were a standard move, but it was after 10 o'clock at night, and the estate was far from the city center. There were no florists that could deliver out here at this hour, especially since you usually had to order hours in advance. As he was thinking, his eyes fell on the vibrant roses blooming in Clara's private garden. An idea struck him. A few minutes later, knock, knock. Clara was lying on her plush bed, reviewing some documents when she heard a knock at the door. "Come in," she said coolly, assuming it was Ava. The door opened, and a faint scent of roses drifted in. She frowned and looked up to see Jason standing awkwardly in the candlelight. Clara was stunned for a second, then her eyes narrowed. "What are you doing here?" Her heart was beating a little too fast, but she forced a cold tone. Clara, honey," Jason started, hiding a fresh bouquet of roses behind his back. He felt incredibly awkward. Damn it. If I wasn't so afraid she'd have me stuffed and mounted for ignoring her, I wouldn't be stammering like an idiot. "Honey?" Clara's eyebrow twitched, but she couldn't suppress the slight upward curve of her lips. "Yes." "What do you want?" she asked, her voice still icy. She had thought he was a true blockhead. "So, honey, do you want to hear a story? Are you about to sleep? How about a bedtime story?" Seeing that she was still giving him the cold shoulder, Jason decided to deploy his secret weapon. "A bedtime story?" Clara raised an eyebrow, closing the file. She was intrigued. "All right, go ahead." She had expected an apology, and instead, he was offering to tell her a story. She'd like to see what tale he could possibly spin to make her forget her anger. "Okay, here I go." Seeing he had an opening, Jason cleared his throat. Once upon a time, there was a mama bear, and she was putting her 3 little baby bears to bed. The first baby bear said, "Mama, I'm scared of the dark." The second baby bear said, "Mama, I'm thirsty." And the third little baby bear, who had been very naughty that day, looked up at his mama and said, "Mama, I'm sorry." "Did you hear that? Clara, I'm sorry." Jason's voice was earnest, almost rehearsed. Clara's icy expression froze on her face. A moment passed, and then the rims of her eyes turned red. What do you mean by that?" "Don't think this is enough to make me forgive you." She pouted, her signature move, but a blush was already creeping up her cheeks. Still, she wasn't ready to let him off the hook so easily. The memory of Brooke Lynn's taunting gaze before she left was still fresh. She didn't believe for a second that Jason hadn't been in on it somehow. Her expression soured again. She rolled over, turning her back to him in a clear dismissal. Jason's eye twitched. That didn't work. He'd have to pull out the big guns, the secret weapon Ava had taught him. His gaze fell on Clara's hand, resting delicately on her thigh. As if moved by some unseen force, he reached out and took it. Clara, who had been feigning sleep with her back to him, felt a sudden warmth envelop her hand. A man's large palm, enclosing her small, soft one. Her eyes shot open, pupils wide with shock. Her heart began to hammer against her ribs, a frantic, desperate rhythm. Jason, he had actually taken her hand. On his own, she felt her cheeks flush hot. But Jason wasn't finished. Holding her hand, he realized just how impossibly soft her skin was. He gave her fingers a gentle, inquisitive squeeze. Clara's face turned a deep crimson, but she remained perfectly still, her back to him. She had to know what he would do next. This was the boldest he'd ever been, and if she moved, she might scare him off. Jason held her hand, confused by her lack of response. He glanced over. Ava said just holding her hand would work. Why isn't she reacting? She can't have fallen asleep that fast, right? Was it not enough? He frowned. In the dim light, her skin seemed to glow, smooth as polished jade, emitting a faint, clean scent. Her beautiful face was framed by a cascade of black hair. Her profile, as she slept on her side, a portrait of seductive innocence. Her cheeks were flushed, and her eyelashes fluttered. She wasn't asleep at all. So, she was still angry. Playing possum. A smirk touched Jason's lips. He gently brushed a strand of hair from her face, hesitated for a fraction of a second, and then leaned in and kissed her. It was a brief, light touch like a dragonfly skimming water right on her soft cheek. She smelled sweet, and her skin was impossibly soft. He saw her body tremble slightly, like a startled animal, and her breathing quickened. A flicker of triumph lit his eyes. He'd never seen the high and mighty Clara sterling like this. It was almost cute, but if she was going to pretend to be asleep, he was determined to see how long she could keep up the act. Clara felt the gentle kiss. It was light, but it was the first time he had ever willingly kissed her while she was fully conscious. A warmth bloomed in her chest. The more it grew, the harder it was to open her eyes. She wanted to, but a strange, unfamiliar shyness held her back. All she could do was listen to the wild thumping of her own heart and wait for his next move, a new sense of anticipation building within her. Then, Jason leaned in again and kissed her lips. Clara's eyes flew open, her gaze locking with his in disbelief. Jason saw that she was awake and gave her a triumphant look. Morning, sleepyhead. He reached out and playfully pinched her cheek. His feelings for her were a tangled mess. Certainly not love, but seeing her flustered and trapped in his arms brought him a strange satisfaction. Besides, his plan had only been to wake her up, but that kiss, it had lingered. Her lips were moist and soft, like a perfectly ripe strawberry dipped in cream, making him want another taste. He found he couldn't look away. What kind of lip balm did this woman use? It was so fragrant, so sweet. He could still taste it, a sweetness that felt like it could melt his very core. Clara was still reeling from the shock. The little animal she'd been trying to trap for so long was suddenly making a move on his own. She hadn't drugged him, had she? Could it be that he'd finally come around? That he wanted to marry her, have a child, and live happily ever after? A galaxy of stars ignited in her eyes. Seeing him still staring at her lips, completely captivated, a fierce wave of possessiveness washed over her. She suddenly reached up, hooking an arm around his neck, and before he could pull away, she deepened the kiss. Time seemed to stop. Jason's initial surprise gave way, and he found himself sinking into the gentle fortress of her embrace. The bouquet of roses he was holding fell to the floor. He didn't resist her clumsy, earnest kiss. Not until her hand slid down, a demonic claw reaching for the hem of his shirt. A rush of cool air snapped Jason back to reality. He grabbed her hand, stopping her. No, we can't. Anything but that. His face was flushed, a faint trace of her lipstick on his lips. The atmosphere was thick with tension. If he hadn't stopped things then and there, he would have made a huge mistake. Clara, caught in the heat of the moment, was abruptly rejected. Her mood soured instantly. Why not? They'd done it before. What was the difference between once and twice? Besides, we're getting married tomorrow, Jason. If we plant the seed a day early, we get the harvest a day early. It made perfect sense to her. What if this one night was all it took? What if she was pregnant by morning? She wanted a child soon. A family of 3, shopping, cooking, taking vacations, and family photos together. That was the life she dreamed of. It's because we're getting married tomorrow that we can't make a mistake now, Jason said, coughing nervously. He didn't have the guts to tell her he didn't want to marry her at all, so he had to stall. I want our wedding night to be unforgettable for both of us. To his surprise, the excuse worked better than he could have imagined. Oh, Jason. Clara's eyes suddenly filled with tears. She curled up and burrowed into his arms, looking completely and utterly moved. Jason let out a massive, silent sigh of relief. Phew, dodged that bullet. Making money was hard, but handling a volatile woman was harder. Okay, Clara, he said quickly, feeling her grip tighten. I noticed you barely ate anything tonight, so I made you some dessert. Here, try it. He reached for a small box he'd set aside. Thank you, my love, Clara said. The sight of the dessert brought Brooklyn to mind, which soured her mood, but the thought that Jason would soon belong only to her quickly chased the feeling away. It's delicious, she said after taking a bite, her eyes shining as she looked at him. Is this your way of apologizing? She asked, her voice softening. Who taught you to do all this? Clara's eyes narrowed, a hint of suspicion coloring her gaze. The air around them suddenly felt dangerous. Knowing Jason's usual style, or lack thereof, she figured there was no way he'd come up with a hand-holding, sweet-talking routine on his own. Either he'd used these moves on other women before, or someone had coached him. Ahem. Jason felt a chill run down his spine as her gaze sharpened. How did she switch from sweet and cuddly to interrogation mode in a split second? Ava taught me, he confessed quickly, afraid she'd get the wrong idea. Why do you ask? Hearing it was Ava, Clara's smile returned. No reason, just curious. She changed the subject, her eyes falling back to the dessert in his hands. You made this just for me? Her opinion of Ava went up another notch. Of course. Do you like it? If you do, I'll make it for you every day, Jason said, laying it on thick. The words felt like ash in his mouth, but lying was better than dying. And at this point, a few white lies seemed perfectly reasonable. He remembered the flowers and presented them to her. Oh, and this is for you. Do you like it? You got flowers too? Ava taught you this as well. Clara's expression softened as she saw the roses. Genuinely touched, she accepted the bouquet and lifted it to her nose, inhaling deeply. The roses were fragrant, their petals vibrant and lush, carrying the faint, sweet scent of fresh earth. Wait, fresh earth? Where did you get these? Clara asked, her voice suddenly sharp. Jason, who had been expecting praise, answered casually. From the garden here at the estate. I saw so many. He trailed off. And besides, all the flower shops are closed now. As he spoke, he watched the color drain from her face. An ominous feeling crept over him. He knew it wasn't great to pick someone's flowers without asking, but the roses were practically climbing up the windows. A few stems couldn't hurt, right? Just then, a panicked cry echoed from outside the bedroom door. Ma'am, it's terrible. We've been robbed. Someone stole all the roses. Ava's frantic voice cut through the air. Before she could finish, her eyes landed on Jason, sitting on the edge of Clara's bed, holding a bouquet of roses that looked suspiciously like the ones missing from the garden. Her jaw went slack. Mr. Sterling? Did you pick Miss Sterling's flowers? She swallowed hard, seeing the cold, murderous intent in Clara's eyes. It was over, utterly over. She had told Jason to appease Clara, not to step on a landmine. Those flowers were the last thing Clara's mother had left for her. Clara treasured them. A gardener was once fired on the spot for letting a single bloom wilt, and Jason had just picked an entire bouquet. He hadn't just stepped on a landmine. He'd ripped her heart out. Clara, I'm so sorry. I didn't know they were important to you. Here, I'll pay you back, okay? Jason saw the looks on their faces and instantly understood the gravity of his mistake, even if he didn't know the full story. But before he could say more, Clara cut him off. The past should be left in the past. She narrowed her eyes, her gaze distant as she looked at the flowers, lost in memory. Her mother was already gravely ill, her days numbered, when she had planted those roses at the old family mansion. She had told Clara not to be sad, that one day, someone would come along and love her as fiercely and tenderly as she did. After her mother passed, Clara bought the Sterling estate and had every single rosebush moved there. She let them grow wild, thorny and untamed, a reflection of the thorny fortress she had built around her own lonely heart. They were a small comfort. But now, the person she loved was right here. The roses were just things. Clara, don't be like that, Jason said, a strange ache in his own chest as he saw her expression. Or Is there something you want? Anything I can do, I'll do it. Really? Then you'll sleep in my room tonight. He thought she was genuinely heartbroken. Her next words left him completely speechless. Ugh, I shouldn't have said anything. You said you'd do anything, didn't you? Clara pressed, seeing his hesitation. Ava, standing by the door, cringed. Ma'am, please, a little self-restraint. Just then a bodyguard entered. Ma'am, Mr. Sterling. The clerk's office is taken care of. We just need Mr. Sterling's ID, and the marriage license will be issued first thing in the morning. With the new expedited policies and a little Sterling family influence, they could finalize the license without either of them having to be there in person. Claire's expression finally cleared. Good. Jason, your ID. Jason hesitated. It was happening this fast? He thought they'd register after the wedding tomorrow. He'd been planning to use the ceremony as a chance to escape. But if they register now, even if he ran, Clara Sterling would legally be his wife. He pulled his wallet out with agonizing slowness. He wasn't ready for this. Clara's gaze grew colder and colder until she finally lost patience with his dawdling. She snatched the ID from his hand and gave it to the bodyguard. I want to see the marriage license before the ceremony tomorrow morning. She paused, then added, and make sure the invitations for the Chun and Lin families have been sent. Oh, and don't forget the Su family. Send one to them, too. The Su family? The name jolted Jason, and he looked up sharply. His reaction did not go unnoticed. What's wrong? Claire's eyes narrowed. Of course the Su family should be invited to my wedding. Why such a big reaction? Do you have an old flame in that family, or something? It was a casual, teasing jab, but for Jason, it hit the bullseye. His head dropped, his expression instantly guarded. Not just an old flame. She's the one. The question left him feeling completely exposed. What could he possibly say? He remembered the Su family saying they were taking Vivian away for intensive training. He tried to look into it over the years. Vivian was indeed busy, caught in an endless cycle of lessons and competitions. There was no way she'd have time to fly back for a wedding, right? Meanwhile, at the Chun residence, Professor Chun, a letter for you, the housekeeper called out after receiving an invitation at the gate. Inside Dr. Hannah Chun was tearing her room apart. Where is it? I know I put it right here. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she searched frantically for the love letter, with no luck. Finally, she fixed her gaze on Wesley Chun, who was leaning against the doorframe. Did you touch my things? Hannah's face was dark. With Jason gone, she couldn't even be bothered to dress up, wearing a loose-fitting lab coat and black-framed glasses that hid her beautiful face. In this state, she finally looked like a 30-year-old professor, and the intimidating aura she projected was chilling. Don't accuse me. Why would I touch your stuff? Wesley shot back, indignant. I should be asking you. Why did you pour the medicine I got from the herbalist into the ginger soup? Were you trying to drug a cow? Even a cow wouldn't need that much. He was fuming. He'd finally found a girl willing to give him a shot, and this which had stolen his special tonic. The girl had kicked him to the curb, saying she couldn't be with a woman. The insult was devastating. Wesley had barely contained his rage, and now he comes home to this interrogation. And the other day when Jason showed up, she'd change her clothes and put on makeup. He'd thought she'd turn a new leaf. But as soon as Jason left, she reverted to her old self. That woman was definitely trying to seduce that kid, just because he was younger, fitter, and better in every way. What was so great about him? What? Your medicine. Hannah looked startled, and then it all clicked. So that's why the normally innocent Jason had spent half the night in the bathroom. That was the cause. That herbalist of yours. Where are they based? Does it work? She asked, coughing as a faint blush rose on her cheeks. Don't worry, I use your stuff. I'll buy you a replacement. It was a redundant question. Judging by Jason's endurance that night, the tonic was clearly effective. Asking for the address wasn't out of line, was it? That's more like it. Wesley grunted, ready to share the contact information. Just then, the housekeeper came in. Professor Chun, your letter. Hannah took it with a frown, glancing at the envelope. It was an invitation. Who's this from? Was a major family in New York getting married? She couldn't recall. She was usually so engrossed in her research that she rarely socialized within high society. Who would invite her? Oh, it's from the Sterling family, the housekeeper explained. The person who delivered it also said that if you were willing, Ms. Sterling would like you to be one of her bridesmaids. Clara Sterling? Isn't she already married? Hannah's interest was piqued. She remembered hearing that Brooklyn and Clara were interested in the same man. This could get interesting. Smiling, she opened the invitation. The smile vanished when she saw the groom's name. Bride, Clara Sterling. Groom, Jason Miller. Hannah stared at the names, feeling as though a hand had closed around her throat, choking the air from her lungs. The room began to spin. All the clues from that rainy night suddenly clicked into place. Why Brooke and Clara had both shown up at her house. Why they were fighting over the same man. That man was Jason. And just 2 days ago, she and Jason had been in her bedroom. After the frantic search, her energy was already depleted. She felt her vision go black, and she nearly fainted on the spot. Wesley, upon hearing the groom's name, snatched the invitation from her hands. What the hell? Why him? The thought of Jason driving his car, eating his food, and making his wife get all dolled up made him see red. He felt just as faint as Hannah. But before he could pass out, he heard Hannah's explosive roar. Get him out of my sight. Get the car ready. We're going to the Sterling estate. Her face was contorted with fury. She kicked Wesley aside and stormed out into the night. She would not let Jason marry Clara. Absolutely not. The Sterling family was a viper pit. Even with Victor Sterling out of the picture, Clara herself was a killer, and with that cryotoxin in her system. She had a year at most. Jason was so young, just an innocent boy. If he truly fell for Clara, he would be used up and discarded, left completely broken. Besides, Jason had written her a love letter in high school. He was supposed to like her, wasn't he? Had he given up on himself because she was married and chosen to be with Clara out of despair? The more Hannah thought, the angrier she got, and the more she wanted to murder Wesley. She had to explain things to Jason. Her marriage to Wesley was just a contract. If Jason didn't like it, one dose of poison could get rid of him. He couldn't give up on his life and marry Clara Sterling. The Sioux Estate, Switzerland. This Clara Sterling is an absolute fool, marrying some poor kid. I really don't understand what she's thinking, Madame Sioux muttered, holding the invitation as she walked into the house. The Sterlings were efficient. An invitation for the Sioux family was flown over on a private jet, an extravagant gesture. It had arrived just a few hours after being sent. Julian Sioux, standing nearby, saw the invitation in her hand. Whose is that? He asked with a frown. Who else? Clara Sterling's, his mother said, waving the card. And with that poor boy, Jason Miller. You have no idea. When I saw that kid back in the countryside near New York, I knew he was bad news, Madame Sioux scoffed. So young, and already stealing your watch. And now Clara Sterling has her eyes on him. A flicker of guilt crossed Julian's face. Yes, scum like him should just die. He was the one who had planted the watch in Jason's backpack. But he was convinced that even if he hadn't, a poor person like that would have stolen something eventually. But wait, when he was in New York yesterday, hadn't his contact said Jason had run away? Now he was back, and getting married to Clara Sterling? Such a hypocrite, just showing off how popular he was with women. Julian's expression twisted with dark envy. Just then, Vivian's cool, gentle voice came from behind him. Mother, you just said, Ms. Clara Sterling is marrying whom? Vivian had appeared without a sound, a cold light glinting in her narrowed eyes. She thought she'd heard Jason's name. Good heavens, girl. Stop sneaking up on people like that. Madame Sioux jumped, startled, then waved a dismissive hand. Who else could it be? That Jason. It's no one. Julian cut her off abruptly. What does it have to do with you, Vivian? You should be focusing on your blood draw in 2 days. If anything happens to my sister, you know the consequences. He shot Vivian a warning glance, snatching the invitation from his mother's hand and hiding it behind his back. Years ago, he'd been interested in Vivian. He'd made all the right moves, but she'd ignored him completely, her heart set on that pauper, Jason. For years, under the Sioux family's control, she'd never had a chance to return to the States or see Jason again. If she knew Jason was getting married, she might defy her father's orders and insist on going back. He couldn't let them meet. What he couldn't have, Jason Miller certainly couldn't have either. The thought made him grind his teeth. He couldn't believe it. Without Vivian, Jason had still managed to climb his way up to the Sterling family, becoming an equal to the Zus. He would not allow it. Julian's face hardened. He thought of Victor Sterling's son, Evan. An idea began to form. Oh, is that so? Vivian's eyes narrowed further. She let out a soft, seemingly casual laugh and walked past them, her expression growing deeper and more pensive. Julian's over-the-top reaction had only made her more curious. Why would he be so agitated over Clara Sterling's wedding? Vivian stepped into the bathroom and dialed a number. I need to find out who Clara Sterling is marrying tomorrow. Yes, I want a full background check. A heavy, unsettling feeling settled in her chest, like a stone pressing down on her heart. For years, she'd stayed away, afraid the Sioux family would extend their reach to Jason. He was doing okay now, right? He had to be. Meanwhile, at the Sterling estate, Jason lay on his side in Clara's bedroom, watching her sleep. He carefully tried to slide his arm out from under her head. MMM. Clara, who was using his arm as a pillow, let out a soft murmur of protest. Jason froze, then gently patted her shoulder. Clara? Honey, he whispered next to her ear. I'm just going to the bathroom. She didn't stir, her eyes remaining closed. Seeing that she was sound asleep, Jason cautiously extracted his arm and slipped into the end suite. "Hey, Sprite, you up?" he whispered, pressing the chip behind his ear. "What do you want?" Sprite's tired voice crackled back. He was in the middle of an all-night gaming session. "Right now, I need you to order me 100 bouquets of roses." "No, make it 1,000. Sprite was confused. "What do you need roses for? Didn't you already pick Clara's?" "That's why. I picked her flowers, so I have to at least try to make up for it." If he hadn't known they were planted by her late mother, it would be one thing. But now that he knew, he had to do something. 1,000? Sprite sounded amazed. "Jason, since when are you so generous? 1,000 bouquets? Just do it. It's the middle of the night. Where am I supposed to get that many flowers? Don't tell me you're actually going through with this wedding." A note of real concern entered Sprite's voice. Jason didn't know how to answer. What choice do I have? She has my ID. But he had no intention of staying by her side. There were no feelings between them, and the woman was a ticking time bomb. One day she's fine, the next she might snap and come at him with a whip or worse. He hadn't forgotten the fate of her previous fiancés. Tomorrow, he had to escape. "Get some people in place at the wedding venue tomorrow," Jason added quickly. "With that many people, it'll be chaos. It might be my only chance. Oh, and don't forget to book a plane ticket." He wasn't making the same mistake as last time, when Clara had bought out every available flight. "Got it," Sprite said. "But the flowers? I can't do that. It's the middle of the night. I'm not the Flash. $2,000. Can you do it?" Jason said, his voice flat. Sprite's tone changed instantly. Can do. Don't you worry. I'll have them at your door in 20 minutes." The flip-flopping was shameless. Jason rolled his eyes and went to sit on the living room sofa to wait. Surprisingly, the doorbell rang just a few minutes later. That was fast. Assuming it was the delivery, Jason walked to the main door and opened it, only to find a beautiful, anxious face staring back at him. "Professor Chun? What are you doing here?" he asked, surprised. It was Hannah Chun, who had rushed over in the middle of the night. She was still in her work clothes, having only taken off her glasses. Her delicate face was beaded with sweat, and she was breathing heavily from running, her brow furrowed with worry. "Jason, are you okay?" she asked, but as she saw him standing inside the Sterling mansion in his pajamas, her eyes flashed with a dark anger. They were already living together, and Jason had kept it from her. A furious rage erupted inside Hannah, and her expression turned grim. "Professor? I'm fine. Why are you here?" Jason sensed the shift in her mood and felt a pang of guilt. He instinctively shifted his body to block her view of the house. He hadn't wanted her to know about the wedding. It was selfish, but now the secret was out. "Why?" she retorted, her voice dripping with hurt. "You're getting married, and I'm not allowed to come?" "Jason, why didn't you tell me? If the Sterlings hadn't sent an invitation, were you planning to hide it from me forever? Do you have any idea what kind of place this is?" She struggled to keep her voice down, but it trembled with anger. Jason was taken aback by her intense reaction. "Professor, I just figured you were busy. And my wedding? It's not a big deal. It wouldn't have mattered if you knew or not." His explanation only made her angrier. "Not a big deal? Marriage is not a big deal. Jason, you're too young. You're only 18. This isn't the time for games. You're coming back with me. Clara Sterling is not right for you." Hannah reached for Jason's hand, her words tumbling out in a rush. Jason looked at her, completely bewildered. "Professor Chun, what are you talking about?" He frowned, glancing nervously around. He felt an icy stare on his back, and his senses went on high alert. Damn it. Even if she's right, you can't say that stuff here at the Sterling estate. He had a gut feeling Clara was right behind him, or at least one of her people was. It felt like a pair of invisible eyes were boring into his back. He pulled his hand away from Hannah's grasp. "Professor, I don't know what you're talking about," he said, forcing a cold tone. "My fiancé and I are in love. We're perfect for each other. Please don't say things like that again." As he spoke, he blinked furiously at Hannah, trying to signal her. Just then a bodyguard walked over. "Mr. Sterling, the 1,000 bouquets of roses you ordered have arrived. We're bringing them in for you." Several guards, grinning as if they'd just witnessed a rom-com scene, carried in a massive floral arrangement. Hannah's gaze followed the roses, and her eyes turned bloodshot. "Jason, you bought those. For Clara." Her voice trembled as she pointed at the flowers, her eyes welling up with tears. "Then what about the love letter you gave me in high school? What was that?" Back then, she had believed she was the only person he liked. A high school freshman's heart was so pure, so sincere. But after just 1 year apart, he'd turned his attention to Brooklyn. At the time, she noticed that Brooke looked a little like her, and assumed he was just using Brooke as a substitute. But now, Clara looked nothing like either of them, and he was willing to marry her? Why? Could his affections change so quickly? Was it so easy for him to fall for someone else? Hannah stared at him, her eyes burning. For a split second, she wanted to rip open his chest and see what was inside his heart. But a cool voice cut through her thoughts. My apologies for the scene, Professor Chen. My fiancé may be young, but he certainly knows how to spoil a girl. Clara's voice, laced with a soft laugh, came from right behind Jason. She was wearing a matching pajama set, and she glided forward on bare feet to lean intimately against his shoulder. The look she gave him was a dizzying mix of adoration and raw, possessive desire. Thank you, darling, she purred, plucking a single rose from the bouquet and sniffing it delicately. I love them. They looked like a pair of lovers, completely absorbed in each other, their gazes practically intertwined. Jason, however, was screaming internally. He knew he'd felt someone watching him. He remembered Ava saying that Clara was an extremely light sleeper, often suffering from insomnia. The slightest disturbance would wake her. It was clearly true. Hannah watched them, her eyes now completely bloodshot. Fiancé. She let out a cold, bitter laugh. Not even married yet, and they were already acting like this, living together. And just 2 days ago, she had let him stay in her house, sleep on her floor. She felt like an absolute fool. Jason, are you really going to marry her? Hannah demanded, her eyes red as she pointed at Clara, though her gaze was locked on Jason. She was searching for a flicker of doubt, a hint of hesitation. But with Clara's eyes on him, Jason didn't dare show anything. Yes, Professor. Our wedding is set. I'm going to marry her. If you're free, you're welcome to attend the ceremony. Jason felt he was being as obvious as he could. He'd blinked so much his eyes were starting to cramp. His feelings for Hannah were complicated. He'd had a crush on her back when he was at his lowest, grateful for her help. But that was just a foolish teenage mistake. He'd been mortified when he learned the letter had ended up in her hands. He didn't know how she felt, but he knew something was very wrong here. Whatever misunderstanding there would have to be cleared up later. Beside him, Clara beamed with satisfaction. Any other questions, Professor? She asked, raising a perfectly sculpted eyebrow in a clear challenge. She was thrilled that Jason had so decisively chosen her in front of another woman. At the same time, a new sense of urgency took hold. This Hannah Chun was clearly a threat, just as she'd suspected. She was glad she had moved quickly. To avoid any more complications, they had to speed things up tomorrow. She absolutely could not let him get away again. Fine, Ms. Sterling. I wish you both an early heir. Hannah's gaze went cold, inch by inch. She turned on her heel and walked away. If she ever came looking for Jason again, she was a dog. Since he was so determined to do this, she was done with him. She wouldn't meddle in his affairs anymore. She fiercely suppressed the fire in her heart, but 1,000 tiny voices in her head were screaming at her. This wedding, are you really going to just let it happen? Back at the estate, Clara stared after Hannah's retreating figure, a smile playing on her lips. She turned her attention to the roses. You really bought these for me? She asked Jason. He nodded, and a flicker of genuine emotion crossed her face. Thank you. This time, it was heartfelt, not for show. Other than her mother, no one had ever given her roses. I didn't realize. You could be so thoughtful, Clara murmured, her eyes misty. She wrapped her arms around his shoulders, pecked him on the corner of his mouth, and then slid her arms around his neck. Her cool, melodic voice took on a playful, husky tone. Darling, let's not talk out here. It's cold. Carry me to the bedroom. Her arms tightened around his neck as she whispered. We can talk. Slowly. In there, he was being so good to her, taking her words to heart. She couldn't be stingy in return. She had something very special to reward him with. Jason felt a surge of heat rush through him. Danger. Clara. Honey, didn't we agree? Tomorrow is our wedding night. We're going to have an unforgettable wedding night. Me sleeping in your room tonight. Isn't that a bit inappropriate? Jason tried to reason with her, but Clara just chuckled. What are you thinking about, you silly boy, she said, poking his forehead affectionately. Fine. Since you're so scared of my room, I'll let you off the hook for tonight. She had been planning to give him the inheritance her mother had left for her, but seeing his panicked expression, she couldn't bring herself to tease him further. It would be better to give it to him tomorrow at the wedding. Then just carry me back to bed, darling. We need to sleep. We have to be up early for makeup tomorrow, Clara said, holding out her arms to him again. Seeing that she had no ulterior motives, Jason relaxed and lifted her into his arms. She was incredibly light, almost weightless, like a bird with hollow bones. He frowned. Clara, you're so thin. Is it because of the illness? He was genuinely curious. The cryotoxin shouldn't make someone this frail, should it? And in this state, she wanted to have a child? She'd be a high-risk pregnancy for sure. She was really willing to sacrifice her own body just to keep the sterling fortune out of Victor's hands. Clara's eyes lit up with a smile. Are you worried about me, darling? Her voice, usually so cool, was now laced with a rare warmth. Don't worry. Aside from the cryotoxin, I'm perfectly healthy. I just don't have much of an appetite. As long as you cook for me every day from now on, our baby will grow up strong and healthy. There was a hint of longing in her voice. He hasn't even married me yet, and he's already concerned about my health? She thought. He's actually kind of sweet. Our baby. Jason's mouth twitched. He saw Clara stroking her flat stomach with a dreamy expression and didn't have the heart to burst her bubble. They hadn't even signed the papers, and she was already talking about babies? Terrifying. Besides, it was just that one night. The chances of her getting pregnant were practically zero. She was getting way ahead of herself. He pushed the thought aside, placed her gently on the bed, and pulled the covers over her, his expression carefully neutral. But because she wouldn't let him leave, he once again spent the night as her human pillow. At the old Sterling family mansion, Evan Sterling sat in his father's office, his face a mask of frustration. He'd made over a dozen calls, but no one was willing to help get Victor out. They were all terrified of Clara. Without his father, what was his place in the Sterling family? Don't worry, son. Have some fruit, said the elegant woman who had been with Victor, her tone calm. Behind her, the butler Wong followed with a tray of tea. Victor's arrest was a problem, but at least it delayed the exposure of her own secrets. For that, she was grateful. Evan swatted the teacup from the butler's hand. Is this really the time for tea? He roared, not noticing the hurt look on Wong's face. Now, dear. The woman began, but she was cut off by a ringing phone. Evan's eyes lit up when he saw the caller ID. Mr. Sue, what a pleasant surprise. How can I help you? Anything you need, he answered eagerly, his expression brightening as he listened to Julian's Sue on the other end. Yes, don't you worry. I'll take care of it, Evan said, his voice brimming with excitement. After hanging up, he looked at the mess on the floor, a cruel smile spreading across his face. Jason Miller, you got me thrown in the precinct, he muttered. This time, you can't blame me for what happens next. This was his only chance to get Victor out. While family ties were often thin among the elite, Victor genuinely doted on his only son. And more importantly, only with Victor in charge could he get his hands on the sterling fortune. Robert Miller, Evan said to himself after a moment's thought. It's time to give you a chance to avenge your son. He hesitated, then dialed Robert's number. The next morning, the Sterling estate. Oh, really? I didn't think Evan would be so predictable, even after getting out. Jason leaned against the bathroom sink, a cold smile on his face as he listened to Sprite's report. He'd had Sprite keep tabs on Victor and Evan from the moment they started targeting him. He'd even anticipated Leo's accident. He just hadn't expected Evan to make a move so soon. This would make things much easier for him today. All right, you should have some of the latest R&D stuff, right? Give me a couple of pills, Jason said while brushing his teeth, a wide grin spreading across his face as he thought about his plan. If Clara could play dead, why couldn't he? He'd just use Evan's little scheme as cover. You got it, Sprite said, always eager for chaos. Someone will hand them to you at the venue in 2 hours. The rest is up to your acting skills. It'll be an award-winning performance, Jason said, giving a mental okay sign. He changed into his suit and stepped out of the bathroom. Clara was in the dressing room, having just finished her makeup and was now changing into her wedding gown. Jason waited outside for a moment, but it was Ava who emerged. Mr. Sterling, are you dense? She said with a laugh. The bride makes her grand entrance at the ceremony. Ms. Sterling said you should go ahead to the backstage area and wait. She'll make her entrance when the wedding begins. Jason scratched his head. That made sense. Since neither of them had parents to give them away, this was the next logical step. Okay, should I drive myself? Or... Don't be silly. You're the groom today. Ava gestured to a group of bodyguards. You all will escort Mr. Sterling to the venue. If anything happens to him, it's your heads. She wasn't about to let him escape again. Last time was bad enough. If he got away this time, her life was over. Yes, ma'am. The bodyguards replied in unison, respectfully surrounding Jason and leading him out of the mansion. After he was gone, Clara peeked out of the dressing room. Is he gone? She glanced in the direction he'd left, her cheeks flushed. She looked at her stunning reflection in the mirror, her heart pounding. She didn't want him to leave her side, not even for a second. But for the sake of a wedding ceremony he would never forget, she would endure this short, 1-hour separation. After that, he wouldn't be leaving her side for a single second ever again. Yes, ma'am. You look so beautiful. Ava said with genuine admiration. Then she remembered something. By the way, Miss Bianca went back to her family's home yesterday. Should we invite her to the wedding? Hearing Bianca's name, Clara remembered. As her niece, Bianca should be at her wedding. It was also a good opportunity to mend their relationship. Her niece was stubborn, but she had a good heart. This was a once-in-a-lifetime moment, and she wanted Bianca to be there to see it. In that case, go and extend the invitation to her, Clara said. Whether Bianca came or not was up to her. Clara returned to the dressing room. Staring at her reflection in the wedding gown, her cheeks slightly flushed, she gently touched her face, lost in thought. It was really happening. She was about to marry Jason. They were about to become husband and wife. If only she had more time, maybe she could give him several children. She could watch them grow, hear them call her mama, and him did Just the thought was enough to bring her a profound sense of happiness. But her happiness was fleeting, perhaps only for this one short year. And that was precisely why she could not allow him to leave her side. Not for a single second. The Sterling family home, New York City. Miss Bianca, my lady asked me to personally deliver this invitation to you, Ava said, holding out the envelope. She stood at the door, looking sincerely at the downcast Bianca. If you have time, she would be honored if you would attend her wedding. It's a once-in-a-lifetime moment for her, and she hopes that you, as her only family, will be there to offer your blessing. Ava had been with Clara for a long time and knew about the rift between her and Bianca. She fell for the girl. And considering Clara wasn't seriously hurt in the car accident, which had happened while Bianca was having an episode, they had decided to let it go. So when Clara suggested inviting Bianca, Ava had made the trip herself without hesitation. But at her words, Bianca's beautiful eyes, as if triggered, turned dark and bloodshot. You're saying, this is an invitation to Clara and Jason's wedding? She hissed, staring at the offensively red envelope. Her shoulders trembled uncontrollably as a monstrous wave of rage threatened to consume her. How could this be happening? That useless Brooklyn. She had given her the address, all the information, and she still couldn't stop the wedding. Useless. No, she absolutely would not let this wedding happen. Bianca snatched the invitation from Ava's hand, her face a thunderous mask, and stormed back into the house, leaving a stunned Ava in her wake. Miss Bianca? She seems so happy that her aunt is getting married, Ava thought, amused. Inside, Bianca was already dialing Brooklyn's number. Brooklyn, look at the mess you've made. Why is the wedding still happening? What did you do? Bianca shrieked into the phone. She was about to explode. What had that idiot done? Pushed her aunt into marrying Jason tomorrow? They were practically already registered. She would have been better off doing nothing. On the other end, Brooke casually cleaned her ear. Bianca, have I been too nice to you? Since when do I need to report my actions to you? She drawled. Besides, so what if they're getting married? You're a niece. Why are you so worked up? She added with a smirk, acting completely unbothered. In reality, she was standing in front of a mirror, trying out different makeup looks. Behind her, a row of exquisite wedding dresses stood on display. She ran her hand over the fine material of one, a look of deep satisfaction on her face. Her crimson eyes gleamed with a crazed anticipation for what was to come. That white rose bridal shop was surprisingly efficient. After she'd burned it down, she'd paid a hefty sum in compensation, a pittance to her, of course, and the owner's attitude had done a complete 180, even throwing in several extra gowns for free. She had ordered a dozen. Have the custom orders arrived yet? She asked a bodyguard standing nearby. This shop has good service. Go order a few more. The bodyguard's mouth twitched. Ma'am, is it possible they're just nice because you gave them an obscene amount of money? For them, she was a walking ATM. Those million-dollar dresses would have collected dust for years, and she bought out their entire stock. Of course they were happy. Even Mr. Lee would call her a spendthrift. Brooke's bizarrely calm attitude finally made Bianca snap. Brooklyn, are you even listening to me? I thought you liked him. Are you just going to stand by and watch him marry my aunt? She couldn't understand it. How could she be picking out clothes at a time like this? Brooke just shrugged. What do you want me to do? Crash the wedding? Brooklyn, have a reputation to uphold. If Jason Miller doesn't want me, I'm not going to waste my time on him. Do I look like the kind of person who chases after a man? She said without batting an eye. The bodyguard's twitch intensified. Isn't that exactly what you are? You. Brooklyn, I thought your love for him was so deep. Turns out it was nothing. Bianca seethed. Brooke's lips curved into a sly smile. Bianca, don't try to provoke me. You just want me and Clara to fight so you can swoop in and play the hero, don't you? Nice try. Brooklyn, won't let you have your way. She applied her lipstick, her beautiful face looking even more triumphant. If Mr. Lee hadn't pointed it out to her yesterday. She would have never seen it. Of course, mister. Lee had advised her to give up the fight, but clearly, when Brooklyn wanted something, she never gave up. You. Bianca froze, her scheme exposed. Her anger had nowhere to go. Wait a second. Since when did the tacky, stupid Brooklyn get so smart? Before she could figure it out, Brooke hung up. She selected a wedding dress and put it on. Just then, Kinsey walked in and stopped dead in her tracks. Her expression, one of utter shock. Brooke, what are you doing? You're not actually going to crash the wedding, are you? Kinsey was baffled. When she heard Jason and Clara were officially getting married, she felt a strange anxiety herself and had come to see what Brooke was up to. She never expected to find her in a wedding dress. What on earth was she planning? It's none of your business. Brooke turned and saw it was Kinsey, giving her a cold look. She still hadn't forgotten Kinsey's advice to wear those tacky white stockings. Are you really going to their wedding? Kinsey frowned, her gaze complicated as she scanned Brooke, looking stunning in the wedding gown. Seeing her like this filled Kinsey with a mix of happiness and sorrow. She didn't want Brooke and Jason to get back together, but someone had to stop this wedding. And she, a mere heiress of a medical family, didn't have the power to challenge Clara Sterling. So what if I am? Brooke's tone was icy. If you're here to talk me out of it, you can leave. When Brooklyn made a decision, no one could change it. Wait, Kinsey called out just as Brooke was about to leave. I can help you today, but you have to promise me. You can't treat Jason with that same hot and cold attitude anymore. You can't hurt him again. After a long hesitation, she finally said it. She knew Jason was being forced to stay with Clara, forced into this marriage. She wanted him to be happy. So, if Brooke could stop this farce, she was willing to help. Even if it meant pushing Jason back to Brooke. At least he liked Brooke. He would be happy with her. Hearing this, Brooke slowly turned her head, a determined look on her face. Fine. Elsewhere, Bianca, fuming after Brooke hung up on her, couldn't sit still. Her eyes red, she clutched the crumpled invitation, ran out of the villa, and jumped into an SUV, speeding towards the wedding venue. To hell with the organization, to hell with the mission. She could give it all up, but not Jason. Everything she had done, crawling up from nothing to her current position, had been for him. To be with him. She would absolutely not allow him to marry anyone else. Downtown New York. Ocean View Gardens. By 10 in the morning, the wedding venue was perfectly arranged. Guests were arriving in droves, a veritable who's who of New York's elite. Ocean View Gardens was stunning, nestled in what looked like a vast sea of flowers, earning it its name. The emerald lawn was carpeted with pink and white roses, creating a romantic, fairy tale setting. For a moment, even bitter business rivals set aside their differences and mingled peacefully. Ava and a team of bodyguards stood at the entrance, welcoming guests, their faces beaming with joy. Backstage, Jason paced, surveying the layout. The entrance was only guarded by Ava and a handful of people. There were no other bodyguards patrolling the perimeter. The atmosphere was surprisingly relaxed. Jason frowned. Did Clara really trust him not to run? A complicated feeling stirred within him. Just then, a waiter walked past, and as they brushed shoulders, pressed a small white porcelain bottle into his hand. Simultaneously, a message from Sprite came through his earpiece. Pill and people are in place. Robert Miller's guys have also infiltrated the venue. When the time comes, you pretend to get shot, fake your death, get in the ambulance, and it will take you straight to the airport. I've already booked your ticket. Sprite have been thorough this time. Jason nodded, staring at the vial in his hand. Could he really escape today? Why did he have such a bad feeling about this? As he was lost in thought, the wedding music began to play. Mr. Sterling, don't just stand there. The wedding is starting. Ava rushed over and pulled him onto the stage. She shoved a bouquet of white roses into his hands and gave him a thumbs up. You can do it. When Ms. Sterling comes out, just give her the bouquet. With that, she disappeared, leaving Jason alone on the stage. Countless spotlights and camera flashes zeroed in on him. The entire audience turned to look. The glare was blinding. He shielded his eyes and looked out at the crowd, and for a fleeting moment, he caught sight of a gentle figure in white. Vivian, he whispered, but when the light shifted, he saw it wasn't Vivian. It was Dr. Hannah Chun. She was standing there in a white dress, arms crossed, her eyes red as she stared at him. Her expression was a mixture of resentment and pain, as if he had committed some unforgivable crime and betrayed her. And beneath it all, he saw a glimmer of suppressed madness. A terrible premonition washed over him. Surely Hannah wouldn't cause a scene here. She was Professor Chun, the epitome of grace and composure. He must have been mistaken. But before he could reassure himself, another small figure burst through the entrance, and his eyes widened in shock again. Bianca, how'd you get here? He hadn't told her about the wedding. In fact, he'd specifically left her at the hotel to rest, precisely to avoid her causing trouble. What was she doing here? Jason's pupils constricted. Seeing the violent rage in Bianca's bloodshot eyes, a chill crawled up his spine. This is bad. This is very bad. He clutched the bouquet, momentarily forgetting he was on stage, and was about to rush toward Bianca to stop her. But just then, a shower of pink and white rose petals began to fall from the sky. Jason! Clara's cool, melodious voice sounded from behind him. As a soft spotlight fell on the stage, Jason slowly turned around. And when Clara appeared, holding the hem of her white gown, her face exquisitely made up, he was momentarily stunned. The tension and panic of the last few moments seemed to freeze in time. She wore a pristine white wedding gown that made her look ethereal and untouchable, like a rare flower blooming on a snow-capped mountain. Her face, usually bare, was now adorned with makeup that made her so breathtakingly beautiful it was impossible to look away. In that moment, Jason finally understood why they say a woman is most beautiful on her wedding day, especially when she wears the dress for the one she loves. She was beautiful, absolutely, stunningly beautiful. He stood there, mesmerized, unable to tear his eyes away. For a split second, his resolve wavered. Clara, he breathed, half convinced his eyes were playing tricks on him. He had seen her in a wedding dress before, but she hadn't been wearing makeup then. Now, she was on a whole other level of beautiful. More than that, her eyes held the shy, emotional glow of a bride truly anticipating her wedding. In that instant, Jason felt his heart skip a beat, then accelerate. It was the first time he'd felt this way for anyone other than Vivian. He was completely captivated. Clara's cheeks were flushed, her own shyness evident. Yes, she whispered, her gaze dropping, unable to hide the burning intensity in her eyes. The elderly woman on Clara's arm, her hair silver and her face kind, chuckled at their bashfulness. Well, young man, don't you recognize your own wife? Her hair was white, her face lined with a benevolent smile. So, you're Jason. She looked him up and down, then nodded in satisfaction, patting his shoulder. A fine young man. My granddaughter is in your hands now. Clara, she's been through so much. You have to treat her well, the woman said, her eyes turning red as she looked at her granddaughter in her wedding dress, her expression filled with both pain and pride. For years, she had worried endlessly about Clara's future. Clara's health was deteriorating day by day, while everyone else in the family seemed to want her dead. It broke her heart to watch. But now, to see her Clara with a partner in her lifetime, she was truly happy. Grandma, Clara's eyes grew misty as well. In her life, only her late mother and her grandparents had ever truly cared for her. She had thought she would never find a fourth person to love and protect her. But today she had found Jason. She had found hope. The look she gave him was now filled with deep affection. Jason's expression was incredibly complex. Grandma, actually, he wanted to say it, to tell her that this was just a contract, that there were no real feelings involved. But the words caught in his throat. To say something like that at a moment like this. He wasn't that much a monster. The old woman, however, seemed to see right through him. Don't you worry. I know everything. You don't need to worry about a thing. Just be good to my granddaughter. She took a folder from an assistant. This is a business your grandfather left behind. He wanted it to be Clara's dowry, but she doesn't need it now. She has more than enough companies of her own. Clara and I discussed it, and we'd like this to be our wedding gift to you both. She handed the folder to Jason. He stared at it, stunned for a moment. Under Clara's expectant gaze, he took the documents. A storm of conflicting emotions churned inside him. Grandma, I can't accept this. He might love money, but he and Clara were not a real couple. More importantly, he had no intention of staying. He had a whole escape plan worked out. If he took this gift, how could he leave with a clear conscience? Nonsense. It's for you, so take it. The old woman, thinking he was just being shy, pressed it firmly into his hands. I've already had the ownership transferred to your name. You have to take it now, whether you want to or not. What? Jason couldn't believe how fast she'd moved. With that, she took Clara's hand and placed it in Jason's, as if entrusting her entire life to him. All right, Clara, this is as far as I can take you. The rest of the journey is for you two to walk together. She offered a few more heartfelt words of blessing. Then, ignoring Jason's shocked expression, she walked down from the stage. Suddenly, it was just him and Clara. I didn't know you got me white roses, Clara said, her cheeks still flushed, her voice soft and sweet. She hadn't noticed his reaction at all, and simply took the bouquet from his hands. Huh. Jason was baffled. He looked down into the crowd and saw Ava giving him a triumphant little grin. His mouth twitched. While he was still processing everything, the wedding officiant stepped forward. What a joyous moment. Our bride and groom have arrived. Let us proceed to the next part of our ceremony. A wave of applause erupted from the audience. I have to say, that Miller kid cleans up nicely. They look good together. A perfect match. Ms. Sterling certainly has good taste. But you know, he looks a lot like that Mr. G we saw the other day. No way. Still, it's wonderful to see the Sterling and Miller families finally united. It's the stuff of fairy tales. The murmurs rippled through the crowd. Bianca and Hannah watched, their hands clenched in a fist, their eyes burning. But seeing it all unfold, Hannah suddenly lost her nerve. How could she stop this? On what grounds? Jason himself had said he wanted to marry Clara. And her own feelings, he had probably forgotten them long ago. Besides, she was 10 years older than him. Only Bianca continued to glare at their joined hands, a wave of nausea rising in her throat. Her chest heaved, and she tried to scream, but her voice was trapped. A metallic taste filled her mouth. Overcome with rage, she coughed, spitting up a trace of blood. Back on stage, the officiant smiled at the couple. Mr. Miller and Ms. Sterling have received so many blessings today. Now for the next step. He held the microphone to Clara. Do you, Clara, take this handsome man to be your husband? To have and to hold, in sickness and in health, for richer or for poorer, to love and to cherish, until death do you part. Clara looked at the handsome man before her, a radiant smile on her face. Without a moment's hesitation, her beautiful, usually cool features softened with a rare tenderness. I do, she had said 1,000,000 times in her heart. Asked again today, her answer was the same. Forever and always. The crowd cheered. The officiant smiled and turned to Jason. And do you, Jason, take this beautiful bride to be your wife? To love her, honor her, and care for her in sickness and in health, as long as you both shall live. As the officiant's words faded, the entire crowd, Clara included, turned their expectant eyes to Jason. The woman before him tilted her face up, her beautiful eyes filled with anticipation. That fragile hint of softness in her gaze almost made him forget her volatile, dangerous nature. Jason looked at her, this woman in a wedding dress whose entire world seemed to be him in that moment. His steadfast resolve, so firm just minutes ago, began to crumble. How was he supposed to answer? If he said yes, it wouldn't be the truth. He didn't want to marry a possessive, unstable woman who would control his every move, who knew what she would be capable of in the future. But to refuse? The words "I don't" were stuck in his throat. As crazy as Clara was, this moment was real to her. She was a girl in a wedding dress who wanted to marry him, and the hope in her eyes was not fake. He wasn't a fool. He knew how cruel it would be to reject her in front of everyone. So he hesitated, trapped in an agonizing silence. Outside Ocean View Gardens, Brooklyn's signature red Ferrari pulled up. Kinsey got out first, checking her watch with a complicated expression. My people have taken care of it. The security guard's water has been spiked. It should be taking effect by now. She looked back at Brooke, still in the car. Brooke finally emerged. They walked to the entrance and saw fewer than 10 guards, all of them looking drowsy and barely able to stand. Brooke nodded. Good. Thank you for this. If Jason and I get married, as long as you stay away from him, we can still be friends. With that, she strode toward the venue. Kinsey watched her go, a flicker of sadness in her eyes. Jason, I hope you'll be happy. She murmured, her own eyes turning red. But as she looked at the nearly unconscious guards, a sliver of doubt crept in. This was wrong. Knowing Clara, with her meticulous and ruthless nature, there was no way she would leave her own wedding so poorly defended. Something fell off too easy. But before she could voice her concern, Brooke was already inside. On the stage, after a long, internal struggle, Jason finally made his decision. I do. The 2 words were short, but he said them with a choked hesitation, his eyes unable to meet Clara's. Fine, I'll just go along with it for now, he thought. I can explain later. This whole wedding was her idea, anyway. The least I can do is not ruin it for her. Clara heard his hesitation, but to hear him say the words at all was enough. For now, I love you, Jason, she whispered, her eyes shining. She threw her arms around his neck, and her soft lips met his in a tender kiss. The crowd erupted in thunderous applause as pink and white rose petals rained down around them. A single, sweet tear traced a path down her cheek. It was okay. This was just the beginning. She had a whole year. She could wait. She believed that one day he would truly fall in love with her. And one day he would say I do and mean it. Jason's mind went blank as her lips touched his. He instinctively wrapped his arms around her slender waist. The crowd cheered again. Down below, the old woman and Ava were crying and clapping, their faces filled with relief and joy. After so many years, someone was finally standing by their lady's side, ready to shield her from a storm. But not all eyes held joy. Evan Sterling watched with a dark expression, shooting cold glances at a man in the corner wearing a black mask and cap. Robert Miller. He gestured frantically with his eyes. Do it now, or the kid will actually be married to her. Then Julie and Sue's promise means nothing. Robert received the signal, and his hand slipped into his pocket, closing around the grip of a pistol. He stared at Jason, his face a twisted mask of hatred, the jagged scars from the wolf attack standing out in sharp relief. His madness was real, a terror-induced insanity that came and went in waves. He had to take his revenge while he was lucid, but just as he was about to draw the gun, a commotion erupted at the entrance. Brooke Lynn's figure appeared in the doorway. She saw the two of them on stage, locked in a kiss. She heard Jason's words echo in her memory. Her stunning eyes instantly turned bloodshot, and something inside her chest felt like it had exploded. I object, she roared, her voice cutting through the applause. Every head in the venue swiveled toward her. Jason and Clara broke apart, their expressions stunned. Bianca and Hannah, who had been on the verge of despair, suddenly looked up, their eyes alight with a new, vicious hope. Brooke Lynn, thank God. They both despised her, but as long as someone could stop this ridiculous wedding, they would be satisfied. The other guests gasped in shock. There stood Brooke Lynn, her face a vision of exquisite, furious beauty, wearing a magnificent white wedding gown. For a moment, it looked as if there were two brides. Recognition dawned on many faces. Isn't that the Lynn family's daughter? What is she doing? I heard she and Jason Miller used to date. And wasn't she the one who got arrested for fighting over him a while back? She's in a wedding dress. Is she here to crash the wedding? Whoa, this is getting good. Who's she after? Jason Miller? What's with this kid? Why are all these beautiful women throwing themselves at him? The chatter grew louder. When Clara heard the words crash the wedding, her eyes narrowed, but a flicker of calculation, almost imperceptible, passed through them. Jason just stared at Brooke, dressed to the nines in a wedding gown, her face a mask of rage. He felt his brain short-circuit. Are you kidding me? He thought. Didn't I make things clear enough at the bridal shop? What is wrong with this woman? And where did she get that dress? He had to admit, though, Brooke already bore a striking resemblance to Vivian. Now, in a wedding gown with her makeup perfectly done, she looked almost exactly like her.